Derek watches from a rooftop as Sylvie prepares for a high-stakes mission against the clock. She warns him that the portal will only stay open for a few critical moments, but Derek remains completely unbothered, downing a drink while casually brushing off her urgent instructions. He leaps down from his perch with practiced ease, ready to dive into the fray. Confident in his experience, he knows exactly what it takes to pull his team from danger. With a quick quip about making it back for dinner, he activates his gear and surges. Sylvie can only mutter a frustrated insult as she watches him charge toward the unstable rift. This energy crackles violently as the portal reaches its full capacity, signaling the start of action. Fully geared up and looking sharp, Derek draws his blade and prepares to step inside. He walks straight into the swirling void, ready to handle whatever chaos awaits on the other side. This ground trembles violently as the landscape collapses into a chaotic, fiery ruin, leaving our hero gasping for air while surrounded by relentless, monstrous adversaries closing in. He screams in frustration, questioning how his mission spiraled into such a total disaster. Trapped in the heart of the inferno, he watches his allies struggle against overwhelming odds. Time seems to blur into an endless loop of regret that haunts his every waking moment. He sits in the void, reflecting on how a routine job turned his entire life upside down. Despite mastering the system over many years, he still struggles with his own foolish instincts. Old habits prove difficult to break as he remembers the desperate plea to reach the portal. He recalls the intense battle where his team fought to survive against the encroaching darkness. Even as one of the strongest users alive, he realizes that power cannot save everyone. Derek desperately lunges toward the closing portal, convinced he can still pull his allies to safety. Despite his exhaustion and the heavy toll of the fight, he refuses to abandon his team. He hauls his wounded comrade up, determined to drag him through the rift before it vanishes. Every step toward the shimmering exit feels like a race against an inevitable and crushing fate. His companion whispers a grim realization. Knowing their chances of escaping this nightmare are practically zero, sudden chaos erupts as a monstrous force strikes, shattering their fragile hope for a clean getaway. Derek watches in horror as his efforts crumble, leaving him stranded in the heart of danger. This portal shrinks to a tiny speck in the distance, mocking his failure to reach it. Bitterness consumes him as he questions the point of his heroics in such a hopeless situation. Yet he refuses to quit, screaming at the void to hold open just a few seconds longer. Derek screams in desperation, refusing to accept that the rift is finally closing on him. He stretches his hand out, pouring every ounce of his remaining energy into the void. A sharp snap echoes through the air as his connection to the portal is severed. His eyes widen in pure shock, realizing that his last hope has completely vanished from sight. Confusion clouds his mind as he tries to process the sudden, crushing silence of the aftermath. Standing alone in the dark, he wonders how everything went wrong in such a short time. He gasps for air, his face pale and etched with the trauma of his recent failure. Collapsing to his knees, he questions the cruel irony of his current, hopeless and isolated state. Doubt begins to fester as he wonders if his own weakness or a betrayal caused this. Shaking off the paranoia, he grips his blade, convinced his mind is just playing cruel tricks. Derek clings to the hope that Sylvie will eventually open a portal for his rescue. Staring into the endless void while waiting for any sign of a way back home, he spent an eternity honing his skills, turning his glaive into a true extension of himself. Long days of meditation became his only defense against the crushing weight of total isolation. His mind began to fray under the pressure of being trapped in this empty, dark space. Yet he pushed his body to its absolute limit, growing stronger than he ever thought possible, training relentlessly in the shadows with the singular dream of seeing the sun once again. Suddenly, a sharp, rhythmic pulse cuts through the silence. Catching his attention in the dark, a frantic system notification flashes before him, warning that he is drifting out of range. Panic sets in as the screen blares a critical error, signaling his final connection is failing. Derek frantically begs the system to stay, but the connection is already flatlining. This interface warns him he is drifting out of range, demanding an immediate return. He screams in desperation as his only lifeline to reality begins to fade away. Tears stream down his face while he pleads for the system not to abandon him. In a fit of rage, he strikes the void, only to find there is no escape. His own vitality keeps him alive, forcing him to endure the constant agony of regeneration. No matter how much power he gains, his mental state continues to fracture and splinter. While the cracks in his own psyche widen, the void remains indifferent to his suffering, completely broken. He finally stops fighting and wishes for the end to come quickly. As he drifts into the darkness, he feels his identity slipping away once again. Derek finally accepts the call of the void, surrendering to the dark energy surrounding him. A sudden, deafening crack echoes through the stillness as the very fabric of reality fractures. He blinks in disbelief, wondering if his isolation has finally pushed him over the edge. Staring into the abyss, he realizes the space itself is beginning to splinter and break, seeing the rift failing to reform. He realizes this is his one chance to escape. Fueled by pure desperation, he decides that any outcome is better than staying trapped here. He reaches out to manipulate the unstable energy, ignoring the risks of such a gamble. With a manic laugh, he strikes at the void, determined to force his way out. His blade connects with the fragile barrier, shattering the prison that held him for ages. He stands ready to face whatever nightmare awaits, shocked by the sudden change in scenery. Derek unleashes a massive burst of energy, shattering the boundaries of his dark prison. This impact sends shockwaves through the void, finally forcing it to path into the unknown. He realizes this isn't just another hallucination, but a genuine chance to break his chains. A monstrous entity emerges from the rift, snarling as it challenges his sudden violent arrival. Derek mocks the creature, noting that its aggressive greeting is hardly the polite welcome expected. This beast bares its teeth, ready to defend its territory against the unexpected powerful intruder. Grinning with newfound confidence, Derek prepares to show this monster exactly who is in charge. He laughs at the thrill of testing his own raw strength without any system assistance. Launching himself into the fray, he swings his blade with enough force to rattle reality. He strikes the creature head-on, determined to prove his dominance in this chaotic new space. Derek swings his blade with everything he has, carving a path through the chaotic energy. He narrowly avoids a lethal counterattack, realizing his reflexes are pushed to the absolute limit. The sheer force of the monster's strike creates a shockwave that nearly knocks him unconscious. He tumbles through the air, struggling to regain his footing after taking a heavy hit. Staring up at the towering beast, he realizes this fight is far more dangerous than expected. He groans in pain, questioning if his senses are finally failing him in this void. A sudden, sharp realization hits him as he notices something unexpected on his own skin. Seeing his own blood staining his hand, he finally accepts that this nightmare is real. A dark, manic grin spreads across his face as the reality of the situation sinks in. He channels his remaining power into his glaive, ready to face death with a smile. Derek watches as the void itself begins to tear apart under his immense pressure. He plants his feet firmly, grounding himself before launching into the heart of battle. After decades of isolation, he finally unleashes his full power against the monstrous beast. This creature lets out a deafening roar, but Derek remains completely unfazed by the noise, having long ago pushed past his breaking point. He channels his energy into a strike. He dodges the incoming blast with ease, proving that his training was far from wasted. With a look of pure intensity, he challenges the entity to either finish him off. He swings his blade with enough force to send shockwaves rippling through the dark space, his eyes burning with determination. He demands that the monster step aside or be destroyed. He surges forward, shattering the remaining barriers as he carves a path toward his freedom. A massive explosion tears through the dark void, signaling his final desperate bid for freedom. Derek leaps across the crumbling, floating debris with the agility of a seasoned hunter, plunging headfirst into the swirling chaos while screaming his lungs out in pure defiance. His face cracks under the immense pressure of the energy surging through his veins, but he still manages to land a devastating blow right on a giant monster's head, slicing through the beast with a wild grin as he prepares to make his exit, laughing maniacally as the blinding light of the real world finally breaks through the darkness. And with a triumphant shout of freedom, he plummets straight toward a lush green forest. Meanwhile, just a short while earlier in that very same forest, a massive storm rages, leaving a terrified young boy running for his life from an unseen deadly threat, cursing his own stupidity for wandering so far away from the safety of his village, only to trip over a root and tumble helplessly down a steep rocky cliffside, gasping for breath as he desperately clings to the edge of a sheer drop. This storm continues to howl around the jagged peaks, offering absolutely no hope of rescue, especially when a monstrous wolf suddenly corners him, leaving the kid completely frozen with fear, screaming in terror as the beast lunges forward to finish him off once and for all. But the fragile cliff edge suddenly crumbles under the weight of the massive predator, sending the wolf slipping while the boy desperately begs for anyone to save him. Miraculously, he manages to pull himself up, gasping in disbelief that he actually survived, only to look up in shock as a blinding light suddenly erupts in the sky. A massive pillar of lightning crashes down, shattering the quiet forest with an explosive force, revealing a dark-armored warrior standing in the crater while the kid cowers in sheer terror, convinced he just traded a wild wolf for an actual high-level demon from hell, as Derek stands there radiating a terrifying aura of pure, unadulterated dark energy. But a sudden system error flashes before his eyes, warning of an invading system. He blinks in utter confusion, trying to process what this strange notification even means, before the interface ruthlessly decides to eliminate the threat by purging him entirely. A violent purple vortex suddenly opens up, dragging Derek backward into another dimensional rift, leaving him cursing in frustration as he struggles against the overwhelming pull of the void, while the young boy watches the entire bizarre spectacle unfold in absolute, speechless shock. This rift explodes with a blinding flash of light, completely vanishing from the forest, leaving Derek lying unconscious on the cracked ground, looking like a discarded action doll, while the injured wolf from earlier limps back onto the scene, shaking off the dirt, slowly approaching the defenseless warrior to see if he might make a decent snack. Inside his own mind, Derek reflects on the agonizing eternity he spent trapped in the void, wondering if his entire past life and achievements had been completely erased from existence, or if his powerful system had simply shattered into useless, broken fragments during his escape, leaving him to question if his previous reality was nothing more than a beautiful dream, until the wolf violently chomps down on his arm, bringing him right back to reality. Derek merely groans, casually asking for 5 more minutes of sleep like an annoyed teenager, completely unbothered as the massive beast continues to chew on his heavily armored arm, giggling softly because the deadly predator's desperate biting actually just tickles him a bit. This only infuriates the wolf further, causing it to growl with absolute red-eyed fury, until Derek's eye snaps open, cold and serious, as he commands the beast to stop. He effortlessly grabs the massive creature by the throat, hoisting it up like a feather while the young boy watches from the bushes, convinced this man is a literal demon. But Derek's expression suddenly softens into pure childlike wonder as he looks at the beast, excitedly hugging the terrifying monster while calling it a cute little puppy instead. This wolf looks completely bewildered by this sudden affection, utterly failing to process the situation, while the surrounding forest reveals a grim landscape of decaying trees and scattered skulls. Derek casually remarks on how beautiful the place is, telling his new puppy to quiet down, realizing that his escape from the void was indeed real as he stretches his limbs. But his confusion grows when he notices his system interface has suddenly returned to him, showing his name and massive stats, but absolutely zero skills or achievements to his name. Hoping he didn't lose everything, he grips his weapon and prepares to test his abilities, swinging the blade to unleash a massive energy slash, but absolutely nothing happens at all, leaving both him and the confused wolf staring blankly at the completely undisturbed forest. He frantically swings his weapon over and over, screaming the skill name in sheer desperation, only to be hit with a sudden blinding headache that leaves him clutching his skull, wondering if his old system somehow merged with a new one to cause this error. Image 161. Sitting on a rock while cradling the wolf, he wonders where on earth he ended up. This lead pushes forward as the conflict keeps escalating, when a sudden snapping sound nearby catches his attention, echoing through the quiet woods. This wolf growls defensively as Derek looks over, demanding to know who is hiding there, prompting the terrified village boy to throw himself on the ground, begging not to be eaten, which only leaves Derek looking incredibly confused by the kid's dramatic, tearful reaction. This boy sniffs, slowly realizing this strange man might not actually be a man-eating demon, while Derek proudly poses with the wolf, asking what could possibly look demonic about him. But the wolf immediately ruins the moment by barking viciously, scaring the kid half to death. Derek violently shakes the beast to scold it, leaving the boy convinced he is completely insane, before introducing himself as Derek and asking the trembling kid for his actual name. This boy, Thomas, explains he is level 0 because he hasn't turned 13 yet, revealing that one must reach that age and slay a creature to unlock the system, which immediately sparks a dark, calculating thought in Derek's mind as he looks at the wolf, realizing that this puppy might actually be the perfect target for a quick test. And with a single brutal twist, he instantly ends the creature in a spray of blood. Thomas screams in horror, demanding to know why he would kill his own pet, but Derek coldly explains that the level 53 beast would have shredded the kid instantly, telling the shocked boy to give him just a moment to process the sudden notifications. A massive system window congratulates him for slaying a high-level undead forest wolf, sending his level skyrocketing as Derek laughs maniacally at his incredibly easy power-up. Suddenly, more notifications flash, showing his old system successfully suppressing the new invading threat, confirming his theory that the new system was completely unable to erase his original power, leaving him with a smug grin as he realizes he now possesses 2 active systems. Meanwhile, Thomas stands there trembling, his stomach letting out a loud, embarrassing rumble, causing the poor kid to blush furiously as he tries to hide his intense hunger. Derek chuckles warmly, asking if he wants some food, which the starving kid eagerly accepts. Soon they are sitting by a cozy campfire as Derek roasts the wolf meat, handing the boy a bottle of glowing, refreshing water to help wash down the meal, warning him not to drink too fast while taking a casual sip from his own cup, as Thomas pauses, looking down at the magical water with a mix of awe and confusion. Image 11. Derek takes a drink, focusing on how to access his original, overpowered meditation skill. This lead pushes forward as the conflict keeps escalating, deciding to spend a single skill point to purchase the basic meditation skill from this system, which immediately triggers a notification about a dormant, similar skill merging with the new one. A sudden violent surge of energy shocks his body, making him scream in agonizing pain, but the skills successfully merge, leaving Derek gasping as his veins feel like pure fire, instantly boosting his meditation skill to level 20 and upgrading it to greater meditation. He smirks, realizing his old skills aren't gone, but merely dormant and waiting to be unlocked, as his original system once again successfully suppresses the invading system's interference, leaving him with a manic grin as he realizes he will become stronger than ever before. While Thomas nervously holds a pair of hair clippers, questioning the wisdom of a moving haircut, Derek walks through the quiet forest, carrying the young boy on his shoulders while getting a quick haircut. This warrior demands more information about this strange world, telling his passenger to keep talking as they travel. Thomas reluctantly agrees, explaining that absolutely everything in this realm is ruled by the Great System. He mentions how his grandfather always claimed the system was fair, giving everyone equal classes and skills. But the young boy believes the old man was simply too terrified to admit the harsh truth, explaining that the greedy nobles constantly abuse the system to keep the common folk weak and helpless. Finding cheap ways to widen the power gap by trapping high-level beasts for their own children to slay, Thomas grows incredibly emotional as he speaks, accidentally clipping Derek's hair a bit too aggressively in his anger, his eyes filling with tears as he remembers the tragic fate that befell his own parents. Derek suddenly yells at him to watch where he is cutting, sending the terrified kid into a panic, but the warrior quickly tells him to relax, joking that he will only decide his fate after seeing the haircut, and after checking his reflection in a mirror, Derek happily declares that the kid actually gets to live. This scene transitions to the next morning as the warm sun begins to rise over the dense forest, prompting Derek to gently shake the sleeping boy awake so they can continue their journey towards safety, arriving shortly after at a crossroads near a dilapidated, seemingly abandoned wooden house in the woods. Looking at the broken wooden signs, Derek asks which direction leads back to the kid's home village, while Thomas rubs his eyes sleepily, pointing toward the path that leads to Reina's village. But Derek's expression suddenly turns incredibly serious as he spots something highly concerning on the ground. Thomas notices a fresh trail of blood and immediately runs toward the house, screaming for Mr. Jones, dashing inside the ruined building with absolute desperation, hoping his neighbor is still alive and well. He bursts through the shattered doorway, only to be greeted by a horrific scene of absolute carnage, his voice instantly trailing off in pure shock as he stares at the bloody floor, finding the poor old man lying lifeless in a pool of blood, completely defeated by an unseen threat. This young boy freezes in absolute terror, his eyes wide as he struggles to process the tragedy, while Derek calmly walks in, asking if this was the supposedly strong hunter the kid mentioned earlier. Thomas cries out in disbelief, wondering how a level 30 hunter could possibly be taken down so easily, leaving Derek completely unimpressed as he casually asks if level 30 is actually supposed to be strong. This boy snaps in frustration, yelling that a hunter of that level should be completely invincible in this forest. But Derek merely leans against the doorframe, asking if the kid is absolutely certain about that claim, pointing out that the undead wolf he effortlessly defeated earlier was actually a whopping level 53. Thomas refuses to believe the shocking news, desperately claiming that the warrior must be lying to him, before realizing the immense danger they are in and insisting they must warn Chief Reina immediately. Derek silently looks at the bloody doorway, wondering if there is even a village left to warn. Meanwhile, deep within the corrupted forest, a mysterious green orb of dark energy floats silently among the trees, radiating a sinister, glowing aura that hums with immense magical power as it hovers in the air, attracting a wild, injured wolf that slowly approaches the strange object out of pure curiosity. But as the beast sniffs the glowing orb, the dark energy begins to corrupt its mind, causing its eyes to glow yellow as it lets out a vicious, bloodthirsty snarl of pure rage. And suddenly, a massive, spectral demon skull rises from the shadows directly behind the trembling beast, slamming its giant claw down to crush the wolf in a violent explosion of dark green energy. This terrifying skeleton monster roars, its hollow mouth glowing with a sinister, otherworldly green flame, revealing a massive, heavily armored undead warrior that looks ready to unleash absolute chaos upon the land. Elsewhere, a peaceful village basks in the warm morning light, completely unaware of the approaching doom, as a heavy basket filled with freshly washed laundry sits quietly on the grassy ground. A mother wipes her brow, asking her daughter Brandy if she can really carry all that weight alone. But the young girl proudly lifts the basket, boasting that she has finally unlocked the great system, claiming she is now strong enough to help, which brings a warm smile to her mother's face. They walk back toward the village, discussing how her father might bring back leather from his hunt, which immediately excites Brandy, who realizes she can finally level up her basic leatherworking skill, her mother adding that her father might even let her help skin the captured animals this time. Brandy's face instantly turns pale with horror at the mere mention of skinning a dead creature, clearly traumatized by the brutal reality of what it actually takes to level up her skills. A flashback reveals that 2 weeks ago, her father took her out to unlock her system interface, presenting her with a level 10 monster to slay so she could earn her very first level, which turned out to be an incredibly adorable, fluffy little fox sniffing a flower in the grass. She successfully unlocked her system by ending the poor creature, but instantly regretted her violent choice, sobbing in deep regret as she realized she absolutely hated the bloody nature of this world, though her mother reassures her she will eventually grow used to the harsh reality of survival. Their peaceful conversation is suddenly shattered by a massive, distant explosion that shakes the entire village, as her father Travis runs toward them, covered in blood and frantically screaming for his wife. He warns them that high-level beasts are attacking and that they need to flee immediately, grabbing his wife's shoulder while explaining there is absolutely no time to pack their things. Looking at his terrified daughter, he tells her to listen to her mother and run to safety, preparing to stand his ground and defend the village while ordering them to head for the eastern gate. Mallory grabs Brandy's hand and runs, leaving her brave husband behind as the village begins to burn. They look back from the forest path, watching their beloved home get completely consumed by fire, while Brandy tearfully asks if her father will be okay, prompting Mallory to reassure her of his strength. This mother forces a brave smile through her tears, desperately trying to keep her daughter's spirits high, as they join a group of fleeing refugees led by a confident, heavily armored warrior. This leader reassures the panicked crowd that Reina's village is only a single day's travel away, telling everyone there is absolutely no need to panic because they will make it before nightfall. But a massive, decaying wolf claw suddenly crashes down from the trees right behind them, causing the leader to turn around slowly, his confident expression instantly melting into pure terror as a terrifying undead wolf leaps out of the shadows with a deafening, blood-curdling roar. He screams for everyone to run just before the beast brutally tears him to pieces. This refugees scatter in absolute panic as the monster begins to relentlessly hunt them down, leaving Mallory to watch in horror as their only defenders are easily wiped out in seconds. This undead wolf turns its glowing yellow eyes toward the defenseless mother and daughter, dripping blood, surrounding them with multiple beasts, as Mallory bravely raises her spear to protect her child. She desperately commands Brandy to run away, preparing to face the monsters all by herself, thrusting her weapon forward with a fierce battle cry as a wolf lunges at her. Brandy hesitates in fear, unable to leave her mother behind to face certain doom alone. Mallory struggles to hold back the overwhelming strength of the massive undead predator with her spear, but another beast quickly joins the attack, easily knocking her to the hard ground. She braces for the end, silently praying that her daughter can somehow make it to safety, closing her eyes as the vicious monster prepares to deliver the final fatal blow, but a heavily armored hand suddenly reaches out, catching the beast's claws with ease. Derek stands tall over the fallen mother, casually asking if they would like some assistance, while Thomas complains that Derek took way too long to step in and help them. Brandy looks up at the mysterious warrior, tears streaming down her face as she begs him, prompting Thomas to run over and tightly hug his friend, relieved that she is still alive. She desperately begs Derek to save her mother from the terrifying beasts surrounding them. And with a simple nod, Derek draws a small dagger with a completely calm expression. He casually points his finger, unleashing a precise, high-speed beam of energy toward the wolf, which instantly pierces straight through the monster's skull in a blinding flash of light. Mallory gasps in absolute disbelief, completely stunned by the warrior's effortless display of power, while Derek calmly asks what he should do with the remaining 3 undead wolves, leaving the terrified mother to scream at him to just kill them instead of talking. Derek merely cracks his neck with a smug grin, excited to test his abilities further, as the remaining beasts charge forward, completely unaware of the absolute monster they just challenged. Derek looks down with absolute boredom, completely unimpressed by the supposedly terrifying beasts, but another undead wolf leaps from the brush with its jaws wide open, only to get vaporized by a massive beam of energy that levels the forest, leaving our overpowered protagonist to casually charge up his next incredibly devastating strike. He shreds the incoming pack with a series of glowing high-speed claw slashes, spinning gracefully through the air as he prepares to deliver another fatal blow, before driving a bolt of pure lightning straight through a monster's skull. His eyes glow with immense power as the remaining beasts are utterly obliterated, prompting him to complain that these wolves didn't even put up a decent fight. Derek sighs in disappointment, muttering about how incredibly weak the local wildlife is, while Brandy runs straight into her mother's arms, sobbing in absolute relief, though she immediately begins to worry about her father's safety back at home. Mallory reassures her daughter before looking at Derek with a mix of awe and fear, asking this mysterious, overpowered warrior who he actually is and where he came from. He casually pats Thomas on the head, claiming he is just a simple escort, but the young boy looks up with a deeply worried expression on his face. Derek quickly reminds him that saving the entire region was never part of their deal, pointing out that the village is most likely already reduced to ashes anyway. This surrounding refugees gasp in horror, wondering if the legendary Grace Falls sent him to help, but he bluntly shuts them down, offering absolutely no false hope to the survivors. Thomas desperately pulls on his arm, begging him to go check for any survivors, yet Derek merely looks down with a cold, unyielding glare that stops the kid cold, reminding him that he is the one doing all the actual heavy lifting here. He explains that their contract was strictly about getting Thomas home, not saving random strangers, asking the trembling boy if he knows how he managed to survive this long. It is because he only relies on himself and never trusts anyone else to help, making it clear that he has absolutely no interest in playing the hero. His mind flashes back to the painful memories of sticking his nose in other people's business, causing him to grit his teeth in frustration as the dark thoughts resurface. Thomas snaps, screaming that Derek is strong enough to help and should do the right thing, which only earns him a condescending scoff from the cynical, battle-hardened warrior. This emotional kid starts uselessly punching Derek's heavy armor, crying out in pure frustration, screaming at the top of his lungs that Derek is just a selfish asshole. Derek calmly agrees with the insult, watching the refugees stare in stunned silence, explaining that assholes are the ones who survive while self-righteous heroes always die first. He easily catches the boy's weak fist mid-swing without even breaking a sweat, telling him to get strong first before trying to play the noble savior. Thomas glares back with tear-filled eyes, completely unable to break the warrior's iron grip, while Derek internally reflects on how some harsh rules are meant to be broken. Suddenly, he hoists the startled kid onto his shoulders with a swift motion, leaving Thomas completely confused as they begin moving toward the burning village. Derek declares that they are going to see if anything is left to save, which leaves the young boy utterly speechless after the warrior's previous speech. They arrive at the ruined settlement, surrounded by smoke and blazing fires, where a massive flaming beast roars as a lone defender stands his ground, preparing to face certain death with nothing but a simple spear in hand. This monstrous creature lunges forward, ready to crush the brave warrior to pieces, but a massive wave of blue energy cuts the beast down in an instant, as Derek stands coolly with his weapon, having effortlessly resolved the threat. They walk through the smoldering ruins, stepping over the aftermath of the brutal raid, passing by fallen villagers and defeated monsters as Thomas looks on in horror. Derek asks if he finally understands the grim reality of being too weak, explaining that this was never a rescue mission but a grim recovery effort. Suddenly, Derek stops the boy, sensing something moving beneath the heavy rubble, as a faint, painful groan echoes from the collapsed wooden structures nearby. He narrows his eyes, carefully scanning the debris for any signs of life, while Chief Leon slowly crawls out from the wreckage, badly bruised and battered, prompting Thomas to ignore Derek's warnings and rush forward to help him. Leon weakly warns the boy that the area is still incredibly dangerous. This chief then looks over at the impaled body of Brandy's father nearby, sadly noting that the brave man fought well but will not survive his wounds. Travis lies impaled on a wooden spike, coughing up blood in his final moments, while Derek asks if there is a healer nearby who can save him. Leon sighs, admitting their backwater village has no healer of that high caliber, which makes Derek hesitate as he remembers the resurrection potion in his inventory. Our protagonist quickly decides against using it, refusing to let misplaced heroism dictate his actions. Instead, he tells the family to say their final goodbyes while he steps away, leaving Mallory to gasp in absolute horror as she runs to her husband, collapsing beside his broken body while begging him not to leave them behind. Travis weakly reaches out his blood-stained hand to touch his crying daughter, whispering his final words of love and telling her to protect her mother. His hand falls limp as his life fades away, leaving them in absolute despair, while Brandy weeps uncontrollably over her father's chest in the burning ruins. She screams out in pure agony, unable to accept this cruel sudden loss. But Derek and Leon walk away, knowing they must leave before more monsters arrive. Thomas walks silently behind them, tears streaming down his face as he grieves, prompting the warrior to bluntly tell him that he will eventually get used to it. Leon suddenly grabs Derek's arm, furious at his cold and heartless attitude, poking him in the chest while demanding to know who he actually is. Leon questions why he should trust this mysterious stranger with the young boy, but Derek merely stares back with a completely blank and unimpressed expression. Thomas speaks up in Derek's defense, agreeing that the warrior is actually right, explaining that he also lost his parents and understands the harsh reality. This boy quietly admits he is actually jealous they at least got to say goodbye. They continue their trek through the burning village as the smoke rises into the sky, while Derek decides it is finally time to check his system notifications. His interface reveals he defeated several high-level beasts and unlocked a class selection, leaving him completely stunned by the incredibly powerful options presented to him. This first option is Shadow Brawler, a rare class that controls the darkness, followed by Chaos Glaive, an epic class that unleashes pure, unbridled destruction. Another option is Eternal Guardian, an epic class boasting incredible defensive power, making him wonder how he could possibly choose just one of these paths. Suddenly, his eyes widen in shock as another hidden option begins to appear, causing him to tremble as he reads the description of a familiar power. This screen displays Champion of the Void, a class tied to his dark past, bringing back memories of the endless, hungry expanse that once trapped him. He recalls how the Void was a brutal, unforgiving master to him, with the sheer agony of his body breaking under its immense pressure. It was a force that completely beat, broke, and consumed his entire being, but it also offered the ultimate guarantee that he would never be trapped again. Deciding to embrace his dark past, Derek clicks yes to select Champion of the Void as his class, and a blinding pillar of purple light immediately erupts around him as the transformation begins, leaving Leon and Thomas to watch in absolute horror as violent energy crackles through the air, while the chief desperately pulls the boy back, warning him that this power is extremely dangerous. Derek barely notices their panic, casually checking his interface as he unlocks two powerful new void skills, which prompts him to immediately summon a swirling orb of dark energy right from his chest, before the chaotic storm suddenly stops, leaving the survivors staring at him in stunned, silent disbelief. He whispers the command for his new skill, ready to see what kind of monster answers, and a massive beam of cosmic energy shoots down from the heavens, tearing the sky apart, causing Leon to tremble in pure terror, begging the system to save them from this madness. Swirling ribbons of purple light wrap around Derek's arms as he prepares to receive his summon, a wild, confident grin spreading across his face as he feels the sheer scale of this power, while another massive bolt of lightning strikes the ground, shaking the very foundation of the ruins. This chief and Thomas look up with wide, terrified eyes, completely paralyzed by what is coming. Meanwhile, back at the camp, Mallory and her daughter can only watch the distant light in confusion. This cosmic beam slams directly into the center of the village, kicking up a massive dust storm, and Derek narrows his eyes, his playful attitude vanishing as the ground begins to violently shake, because a colossal, terrifying claw reaches out from the portal, revealing a massive void beast nearby. Our protagonist looks up in genuine awe, completely amazed by the sheer size of the creature, while Leon frantically asks Thomas where on earth he managed to find such a terrifying warrior. This worried mother holds her daughter tightly, praying that they will somehow survive this chaotic night. At the same time, Derek is absolutely thrilled, laughing maniacally at the prospect of having his own personal pet as the multi-eyed, purple monster fully materializes and towers over him with a deafening roar. He casually decides to name the beast Asher, completely unfazed by its terrifying, drooling maw, noting that this one is slightly smaller than the last beast but still perfectly usable, which makes the onlookers wonder if this crazy warrior has completely lost his mind out here. Leon realizes with a gasp that Derek is actually attempting to tame and control the monster, but as Derek commands the beast to sit, Asher immediately swings its massive clawed arm, slamming him deep into the dirt with a devastating high-speed strike that shatters the ground, and a massive cloud of dust rises from the crater where the warrior was just standing. Thomas screams out in pure panic, but the chief holds him back from running into danger, as the giant monster rests its heavy claw on the ruined earth, victorious in its strike. Suddenly, Derek emerges from the debris clad in glowing blue armor, declaring he must now destroy it, while Asher stands its ground, completely unfazed by the warrior's sudden and dramatic transformation. He glares at the beast, coldly telling the survivors to get as far away as possible, charging his spear with brilliant blue energy as the two run for their lives behind him, determined to end this quickly without any weaklings getting in his way during the fight. Our protagonist attempts to identify the monster, but the system fails because the creature is completely unknown, prompting him to curse the system before launching himself forward with an explosive leap, knowing he could barely scratch this beast's cousin during their previous encounter in the void. He dives down from the sky, fully aware that there is absolutely no room for error, while Asher roars in fury, ready to swat the incoming warrior right out of the air. Their weapons clash in a violent explosion of energy, but the monster is incredibly durable, leaving Derek completely shocked when the beast easily blocks his spear with its bare palm, before swinging its other massive arm to catch him completely off guard midair, slamming him back down to the earth with a devastating beam of dark purple energy, which forces Derek to cough up blood as his heavy armor takes a massive hit. He struggles to recover, completely stunned by how incredibly fast the monster is moving. Asher immediately capitalizes on its speed, zooming down to deliver another brutal, crushing blow, and a massive explosion of dark energy completely levels the surrounding landscape. Derek gasps for breath, spitting out blood as his body takes an absolute beating, briefly considering playing dead in hopes that the relentless monster will eventually lose interest. But the beast immediately dispels that hope, launching another massive beam of energy right at him, relentlessly pounding the crater to ensure that its opponent is completely wiped out for good. His system warns him that his health has dropped below 20%, forcing him to activate meditation as he struggles to his feet, desperate to get this monster off him at all costs. And with his health sitting at a critical 19%, he thrusts his spear forward, only for Asher to easily snatch the spearhead with its bare claw, stopping him cold. This beast retaliates with a brutal slash, dropping his health down to 18%, and the relentless assault continues, rapidly ticking his health down to a terrifying 14%. Thomas watches the distant explosions with tears in his eyes, terrified for their savior's life, while Leon urges the remaining refugees to keep running as fast as they possibly can. Behind them, the beast gathers dark energy in its claw, preparing a final, devastating strike, aiming the glowing orb directly at the battered warrior to finish him off once and for all. Derek realizes his passive regeneration cannot keep up with this insane amount of damage, as his health bar plummets to a critical 8%, leaving him desperate for a solution. While his heavy armor completely shatters under the pressure, exposing his heavily bruised chest, he spots an opportunity, quickly spending his last skill point to learn Heavy Weapons Master, which prompts the system to detect multiple dormant skills and begin merging them together. This warrior screams in absolute agony as a sudden overwhelming surge of power floods his body. Asher slams the ground, but the system successfully completes the skill merge just in time, upgrading his Heavy Weapons Master skill to level 20 and unlocking its true potential, and a massive shockwave of blue energy erupts from his body, blowing the debris away. He unleashes a flurry of high-speed slashes, finally pushing the giant beast backward, leaping into the air to swing his spear with incredible newfound strength and speed. Our boy roars with determination, pouring every ounce of his remaining energy into this final clash. This spear collides violently with Asher's claws, creating a massive shower of bright sparks, but even with his upgraded skill, he struggles to break through the monster's defense, gritting his teeth in frustration as he realizes he still cannot cut through its hide, prompting him to finally activate his ultimate trump card to fight fire with fire. He activates his newly acquired Channel Void skill, letting the dark energy flow freely, and purple lightning wraps around his spear, supercharging his weapon with immense cosmic power. Derek lets out a primal battle cry as he lunges forward at the startled beast, delivering a devastating void-infused strike that slices clean through the monster's defense. And a massive crescent of purple energy cuts the beast in half, leveling the battlefield. Our protagonist lands gracefully on the ground as the dust and smoke begin to settle, before collapsing onto his back, panting heavily after the exhausting near-death encounter. He smiles up at the sky, quietly admitting that the fight was actually pretty fun. This system rewards him with a rare achievement, multiple skill level ups, and an automatic level up. Meanwhile, a loud knock echoes on a grand, ornate door inside a luxurious palace. A butler enters the room, informing his mistress that she needs to see this report, which details an abnormal portal energy signature detected from a powerful void beast, and the red-haired noblewoman finds the news highly interesting as she sits at her table. She narrows her eyes, immediately ordering her loyal servant to send a hunter to investigate. Back in the forest, the long line of weary refugees slowly makes its way home, when a woman in the crowd gasps, spotting familiar faces approaching from the distance, joyfully announcing to everyone that Chief Leon and the others have finally returned safely. This villagers rush over to greet them, asking if everyone is okay and where the others are. But Leon merely looks down with a heavy heart, struggling to find the words. He sheds a silent tear, unable to hide the grim reality of who they lost. Leon delivers the crushing news to his people, telling them there is nothing left to go back to, leaving the weary villagers to stare at him in absolute shock as the grim reality sets in, and the broken chieftain bows his head, deeply apologizing for failing to protect their home. Suddenly, Thomas spots a familiar face approaching from the distance and screams out in pure joy, running straight into Derek's arms as the young warrior casually welcomes him back with a grin, which leaves the boy stammering in relief, completely thrilled that his savior actually survived the chaos. Derek then walks over to Mallory and her daughter, offering his sincere condolences for their loss, before revealing that he safely stored her husband's body inside his spatial bracelet for a proper burial. This grieving mother gasps in disbelief, deeply touched that he would do something so incredibly thoughtful, shedding tears of gratitude as she softly thanks him for showing such unexpected kindness. Our protagonist simply nods in response, silently acknowledging her thanks before they prepare to camp. As night falls over the forest, the exhausted refugees set up camp around several warm fires, while the guards warn everyone to stay close since the woods are no longer safe. Leon sits silently by the flames, staring blankly into the embers with a heavy broken heart, completely consumed by his failure to protect his people from the devastating monster attack. Meanwhile, Thomas curiously asks Derek what exactly happened to the terrifying void beast they encountered, prompting Derek to casually lie that the creature simply realized it couldn't win and ran away. But the boy is highly skeptical, insisting that legendary monsters never just walk away like that, remembering the sheer terror of the beast's massive claws and the overwhelming power it possessed. Mallory chimes in to agree, noting that taming or defeating such a creature is practically unheard of. Derek merely shrugs it off, joking that he probably just got lucky with a weak summon, chewing on his food while casually declaring that ancient legends are usually pretty overrated anyway. This next morning, Mallory rallies the weary group, urging everyone to pack up and start moving, leading the long caravan of refugees down the dirt path toward the safety of Torith. Along the way, Derek suddenly feels a gentle tug on his sleeve and looks down, finding little Brandy looking up at him, shyly asking if she can have some of the animals, explaining that she overheard him talking about the beasts he stored in his bracelet last night. Finding her request harmless, he summons a fresh rabbit from his inventory with a bright flash, handing it over while promising to give her the larger beasts once they reach their destination. This young girl hugs the rabbit tightly, her eyes filled with a mixture of joy and sorrow. She fondly remembers her late father, who always encouraged her and made her feel safe, tearfully explaining that she chose the leatherworking skill specifically to craft strong armor for the village, wanting to honor her father's memory by ensuring that no one else ever gets hurt, which strikes a chord with Derek, making him realize he cannot do everything entirely on his own. He gently pats her head, warmly promising to give her every single beast he hunts from now on. Soon the caravan arrives at the gates of Torith, where a smug guard lazily taps his fingers, loudly complaining about his terrible day and how much he hates being stuck in this pigsty. He arrogantly blocks their path, declaring that he cannot let them enter without proper identification, which immediately infuriates Mallory, who demands that he go fetch Chief Reyna right this instant. This guard merely sneers, refusing to abandon his esteemed post just to help a bunch of peasants. Desperate, Mallory turns to Leon, begging him to speak up since he is a chieftain as well, but the broken man merely sighs, wondering if he even deserves that title after losing everything. She turns back to plead with the guard, desperately explaining that they have absolutely nothing left, but the smug gatekeeper remains completely unmoved, crossing his arms and repeating his strict orders. Losing his patience, Derek steps forward with glowing blue eyes, asking who would dare enforce that rule, glaring intensely at the guard as he asks what would happen if he decided to break it, leaving Mallory absolutely terrified that the hot-headed warrior is about to murder the noble on the spot. This guard smugly dares him to try, thrilled by the chance to teach these peasants a lesson, but Mallory quickly grabs Derek's arm, begging him to stop because killing a noble will only make things worse. This guard scoffs at them, mockingly praising the woman for having at least some common sense. Suddenly, the heavy wooden gates swing open, interrupting their tense standoff before things turn violent, as an authoritative voice demands to know what on earth is causing such a massive commotion. Out steps Wallace, the arrogant son of a powerful noble, alongside the stern village chief, Reyna. Reyna immediately recognizes Mallory, asking what happened and why they have all gathered at her gates. Upon hearing the tragic news, she offers her deepest condolences and warmly welcomes them inside, before sharply telling Wallace to control his obnoxious thugs since these refugees are now under her protection. Mallory tearfully thanks her, and Reina gently suggests they discuss the details later at her home. She leans in close, quietly warning Mallory to tread carefully because a different beast is prowling here. Leon silently walks past them, his head hung low as he struggles with his immense grief. Meanwhile, Wallace furiously confronts Reina, accusing her of openly flouting his noble authority in public, but she coldly tells him to finish his business and leave, asserting her absolute dominance in Torith. He clenches his fists, threatening to squash her and everyone else in the village like bugs. But Reina casually mentions his father, instantly making the arrogant noble sweat and back down. Watching the drama unfold, Derek realizes his contract is complete, but decides to stay to learn more. Reina notices him standing there, warmly inviting the mysterious warrior to join them as well. He is slightly surprised by her hospitality, but casually shrugs and decides to accept the invitation, walking past the chief, who suddenly feels an incredibly heavy pressure radiating from his body, leaving her completely stunned as she wonders if this young man possesses a legendary aura. Inside the chief's manor, an elderly couple sits anxiously at a large wooden table, with the grandfather trying to comfort his wife as she paces the floor in distress. Delilah angrily snaps at him, refusing to relax while their beloved son Thomas is still missing. Suddenly, the heavy wooden door creaks open, drawing their immediate attention to the entrance, and the worried grandparents look up, demanding to know what could possibly be so important, only for Delilah to gasp in absolute shock, her eyes wide with disbelief as she stares. Thomas comes running through the door, joyfully shouting for his grandparents as he dashes forward, and the tearful grandmother rushes to meet him, throwing her arms around him in a tight hug. She weeps tears of pure joy, unable to believe that her precious grandson is actually safe, while the grandfather joins the emotional embrace, whispering how incredibly much they missed him. Reina, Derek, and Leon watch the heartwarming reunion, glad to have brought the boy home safely. Our protagonist smiles softly, feeling a rare sense of satisfaction from helping this family reunite. Reina gently instructs everyone to take their seats so they can begin their important discussion, and the group gathers around the large table, ready to address the crisis they face. She addresses Derek directly, acknowledging that he is the sole reason the refugees are still alive, bowing her head in deep, sincere gratitude for his heroic actions during the monster attack, while Thomas's grandfather playfully ruffles the boy's hair, teasing him in front of everyone. Derek casually waves it off, telling her it was nothing and to just call him Derek. Reina agrees, noting that safeguarding the people is always a chief's ultimate duty. However, her expression turns serious as she hesitatingly prepares to deliver some bad news, explaining that if he is expecting a reward, she unfortunately cannot offer him any payment because their resources are already stretched incredibly thin due to the ongoing crisis in the region. Meanwhile, in a luxurious garden, a lazy noble demands another drink from his overworked servant, while back in the manor, Derek looks completely amused by the mention of payment, laughing as he explains that Thomas already paid him by helping him navigate the forest. He then shifts the conversation, warning Reina that they have a much bigger problem to worry about. This chief leans forward in surprise, asking if he knows what is happening in the woods, and Derek explains that if this world operates like his old system, they are facing a dungeon break. He explains that dungeons are the core of the system, acting as its very lifeblood, serving as dangerous, self-contained worlds filled with incredible treasure, immense power, and deadly monsters, which are specifically designed to test, torment, and reward those brave enough to enter them. But only lower-level adventurers can enter, ensuring a brutal challenge for anyone seeking their legendary rewards. Explaining that when a system falters or a dungeon is left to fester, absolute chaos erupts as terrifying monsters spill out into the defenseless world, with their corruptive power slowly infecting and destroying the peaceful lands in their wake. This blonde chief argues with her companion about whether a new dungeon could have spawned, while the elderly advisor notes that a hidden dungeon deep in the forest is highly likely, which would perfectly explain the sudden influx of high-level monsters threatening their home. Reina asks if he truly believes this theory makes sense as they study the map, as Richard points to the parchment, asking Derek where exactly he came from. Derek bluntly refuses to answer, telling them they need to find a way to fix this, before walking away and suggesting the arrogant nobles outside should handle the crisis. Calling out to him to wait, she is surprised by his incredibly cold attitude, admitting they have absolutely nothing to offer him but desperately needing his strength, as she swallows her pride and begs the mysterious warrior to help them. Derek gives a flat refusal and heads straight for the heavy wooden door, leaving young Thomas sitting there looking incredibly disappointed and sad by the rejection. Suddenly, our protagonist stops and tells the boy to come walk with him, explaining that he needs to find the little girl to hand over more pelts. This heavy door slams shut behind them as they step out into the village, prompting Richard to point out that Derek's harsh words are actually completely fair, though Reina complains that he didn't have to be so brutally upfront about it. She then turns to Leon, noting that he spent the most time with Derek, asking for his honest assessment of what kind of person they are dealing with. Leon stays silent for a moment, deeply contemplating his answer before speaking, describing him as sarcastic, moody, and constantly asking a lot of basic questions, prompting the curious chief to lean in and ask what else he noticed, only for Leon to drop the bombshell that Derek can literally summon the void. Meanwhile, Derek and Thomas walk through the village streets, searching for little Brandy, with Derek complaining that the town is small, yet they still can't find her. Suddenly, a harsh voice echoes from a nearby alley, telling a rat to let go, revealing a smug noblewoman forcefully pulling a high-level pelt away from the crying girl. This noblewoman sneers in satisfaction as she successfully snatches the valuable fur, ignoring Brandy's tearful pleas to give it back because it was a special gift. She smugly turns away, mocking the peasant and mentioning that Wallace wants to teach Raina a lesson. But she suddenly bumps right into Derek's solid chest, startled by his sudden presence, looking up in absolute terror as a suffocating pressure fills the narrow alleyway, while Derek glares down with glowing blue eyes, demanding his pelt back immediately. As outside, Wallace slams his sword into the ground during a massive tantrum. He furiously screams that a lowly peasant touching a noble is completely unacceptable, warning Raina to step aside or heads will roll in this village. Raina firmly tells Wallace to stand down, refusing to let him start a fight, while privately grumbling about how Derek has already caused massive trouble in under a day, realizing that Leon was absolutely right to be wary of the mysterious warrior. Meanwhile, Thomas comforts the crying Brandy, who is clutching her reclaimed pelt tightly, as Wallace draws his sword, declaring that he will take matters into his own hands. Derek casually tosses the noblewoman's wrist aside like trash, completely unfazed by their threats, telling Wallace he can have her back since he is done playing around. He casually announces that he was just about to leave the village anyway, leaving Thomas completely shocked and begging him not to go so soon. Our protagonist smiles and tells the boy not to worry, promising that he will return, handing him a high-tech device and telling him to practice with it while he's gone. He warns Thomas not to unlock his system until he gets back, then walks away, while Wallace tries to act tough, calling out to Derek and saying he's lucky. But Derek instantly closes the distance, stopping him mid-sentence with a terrifying glare. Leaning in close, he keeps his threat short and simple so even an idiot understands, coldly promising to murder Wallace if he ever touches anyone from this village again. This noble's guards stand frozen in absolute shock, wondering who this terrifying man is. Raina, Thomas, Brandy, and Leon watch in stunned silence as the pressure intensifies, with the sheer terror of Derek's aura radiating outward, completely paralyzing everyone nearby. Wallace quickly orders his archer to follow Derek and take him out, while Derek walks into the forest, remembering Thomas's mention of a high-level achievement. He decides to hunt a monster over 100 levels higher while still low-level, unaware that Wallace's archer is tracking him from the trees, drawing his bow, whispering that the peasant won't even know what hit him as he aims. Meanwhile, Derek checks his system, noting that he needs to find a strong monster, opening his status window to view his impressive stats and remaining points. He decides it's finally time to distribute some of his 40 remaining stat points. But he suddenly pauses as his sharp senses pick up a slight disturbance behind him, realizing the annoying stalker, who has been following him for an hour, is making a move. Derek casually allocates his points into wisdom, intelligence, dexterity, strength, and endurance to optimize his build, instantly unlocking two powerful achievements that grant him massive stat boosts and free skills. Back in the trees, the archer is completely baffled, wondering how his shot missed, but shrugs it off, assuming the clueless peasant didn't even notice the arrow. He draws another arrow and fires a powerful shot directly at Derek's head, which explodes against Derek's neck, kicking up a massive cloud of dust and debris. Derek slowly turns around with a bored expression, asking the archer if he minds, leaving the assassin completely horrified that a direct hit didn't even leave a scratch. Realizing he is hopelessly outmatched, the terrified archer immediately turns and leaps away, desperately fleeing through the treetops while wondering what kind of monster he just crossed. He stops to catch his breath, frantically looking around to see if he lost his target, only to find Derek casually sitting on a branch right next to him, debating skill choices. This panicked archer swings his bow in a desperate attempt to strike the protagonist, but Derek easily dodges the attack while casually wondering if thorns is a good skill. Desperate to escape, the archer grabs onto a branch to put some distance between them, landing on a lower limb while breathing heavily in absolute panic as he retreats. He points his bow upward, unleashing his ultimate skill, Deadai's Barrage, to finish him, raining down a massive volley of glowing arrows directly at Derek's position. This devastating attack completely shatters the tree, causing a massive explosion of wood, leaving the exhausted archer huffing and puffing, desperately hoping that his strongest attack worked, staring through the thick smoke to see if he actually managed to kill the target. Suddenly, Derek's voice echoes from above, casually telling him that he almost had him. He delivers a swift, brutal strike, mockingly adding that it's too bad he chose magic resistance, leaving the battered and bloodied archer to drag himself back to the noble's camp. This wounded assassin groans in agony as he collapses near the wooden barricades, prompting Wallace to rush over in shock, demanding to know if the target is dead. With his final breaths, the archer wheezes, admitting he couldn't even scratch the warrior. Wallace stares in absolute horror, finally realizing the true scale of the threat they face. He immediately orders his remaining guards to pack up so they can flee back to Torith, prompting his confused commander to ask if they are seriously running away from a peasant. This arrogant noble coldly clarifies that they aren't fleeing, but rather going to fetch reinforcements. While deep in the quiet forest, Derek continues his journey alone under the starry night sky. Walking alone through the quiet forest, Derek decides to test out his newly upgraded system, spamming his Identify skill on every random tree and rock to level it up further. But his casual grinding is suddenly interrupted by a rustling in the nearby bushes. Out steps a surprisingly adorable horned rabbit, which the system reveals is level 54, prompting Derek to crouch down and greet the fluffy creature with a warm smile, admiring its big eyes and shiny horn while completely letting his guard down, joking that he would never hurt something so cute even if it were high level. But the little beast immediately launches itself straight at his face with terrifying speed. Shocked by the sudden aggression, Derek barely has time to react to the flying ball of fur, as the rabbit zips past his cheek like a furry, glowing blue missile. He quickly stumbles backward, completely baffled by why this tiny creature is trying to fight him, while the rabbit bounces off a tree trunk to prepare for another high-speed strike. It launches itself forward again, forcing Derek to lean back and dodge the relentless assault, landing gracefully on the dirt before turning around with an incredibly angry expression, huffing and puffing, as if Derek had personally insulted its entire family tree. Amused by its sheer audacity, Derek smiles and asks if it really wants to go, raising his hand to accept the challenge as the rabbit readies its next charge. With a loud boom, the tiny beast shoots forward like a beam of pure energy. But Derek easily sidesteps the attack, moving with effortless grace to dodge the blur, before reaching out and snatching the rabbit right out of the air mid-flight. This fluffy menace squirms wildly in his grip, completely shocked that its attack was stopped, while Derek chuckles at its feisty attitude, holding it up like a prize. Suddenly, the rabbit chomps down hard on his hand, refusing to go down without a fight. A system notification pops up, showing a measly 26 damage, which Derek easily laughs off, but his playful smile quickly fades as a dark realization hits him, realizing that while 26 damage is nothing to him, it would easily kill young Thomas, making him realize just how dangerous even the weakest forest monsters truly are. Deciding he has no reason to hurt the little guy, he gently sets it down, calling it a psycho murder bunny before walking away since it is too low level to harvest, leaving the angry rabbit staring after him with a deeply offended look on its face. As he continues his journey, Derek opens his system to choose a new restorative skill, wondering which option will best complement his current build and keep him alive. 3 choices appear before him on the glowing screen: Cure Toxin, Life Leech, and Rejuvenation. He grumbles about the stingy system only offering 3 options, first inspecting Cure Toxin, quickly dismissing the idea of curing poisons before moving on to analyze Life Leech, which would heal him based on the damage he inflicts on his enemies. But he hesitates, looking at Rejuvenation and realizing it is a highly versatile targeted heal. Making his final decision, he taps the screen to select the supportive healing spell, learning Rejuvenation successfully just in case he ever needs to heal Thomas or the villagers. He immediately sighs in frustration, wondering why he is still worrying about them after leaving. Derek questions his own sanity, wondering why he ran away into the woods like a coward, gritting his teeth in anger as he tries to justify his sudden departure. He reasons that staying would have only brought them ruin, especially after the Void Beast incident, convincing himself that keeping his distance is the best way to keep them safe. Suddenly, a heavy impact strikes him right in the back, knocking the wind out of him, spinning him around in shock as he demands to know what just hit him, only to find the same horned rabbit staring back at him with an angry pout. Before he can ask if it has a grudge, the rabbit suddenly charges past him, leaping straight toward a decaying undead wolf that was creeping up from the shadows. With a look of pure malice, the rabbit prepares to tear the monster apart. Derek watches in absolute horror as the rabbit brutally shreds the undead wolf to pieces, splattering blood everywhere and completely shattering his belief that bunnies are peaceful herbivores. He stares at the blood-soaked creature, realizing this bunny is a total psychopath and an idiot as the rabbit sits there covered in gore, looking incredibly pleased with its kill. Shrugging his shoulders, Derek tells the bunny it can tag along as long as it keeps up, and the unlikely duo begins traveling deeper into the dark forest together. Later that night, Derek cooks some meat over a campfire while his new companion rests, having watched the rabbit easily take down a massive wild boar earlier that day. He gently scratches the rabbit's head, earning a grumpy but satisfied look from the beast, before they both curl up by the warm fire to get some much-needed sleep. This next morning, the rabbit playfully leaps around Derek as they resume their journey, while Derek stretches his arms and yawns, feeling refreshed under the misty canopy. He calls out to his little murder bunny, telling it that it is time to move, but the rabbit suddenly stops in its tracks, refusing to take another step forward. Derek pauses and looks back, confused by the creature's sudden change in behavior, scanning the eerie, bone-strewn clearing ahead that seems to mark a dangerous boundary. Realizing this is where they must part ways, he nods in understanding, while the rabbit stamps its foot, as if warning him of the dangers ahead. He bids it farewell, joking that nothing in this forest stands a chance against it anyway, before turning his back and stepping into the ominous territory alone. Walking deeper into the gloom, Derek tells himself to calm down and focus on his goal, reminding himself that he chose this path of solitude to keep everyone else safe. But his thoughts are cut short as a strange, swirling energy catches his eye. A glowing green rift floats in the center of a twisted grove, pulsing with power. Derek approaches the anomaly, immediately using his Identify skill to analyze the strange portal, which reveals a level 100 Undying dungeon currently in a state of extreme overflow. He realizes this is the perfect place to find a high-level monster for his achievement, but hesitates, knowing he has no idea how dungeons work in this unfamiliar world. Deciding the risk of getting trapped again is simply not worth the potential reward. He turns to head back to the village, muttering that this whole trip was a waste, but a massive burst of green energy suddenly erupts from the portal behind him. Derek slowly turns around, a confident smirk spreading across his face as he spots the threat, as a terrifying, skull-faced acidic ghoul at level 115 steps out, looking exactly like the high-level target he needed to vent his built-up frustration. He draws his spear, declaring that he has been holding back his anger for too long, while the monstrous ghoul roars in fury, ready to tear the intruder apart. Charging his weapon with crackling blue energy, Derek prepares to unleash his full power, as the massive beast lunges downward with its razor-sharp claws to crush him. Derek easily dodges the strike, spinning around to deliver a devastating slash with his spear, slicing clean through the monster's arm and sending a wave of energy through the air. He mockingly asks if that is all the high-level beast has to offer, but the ghoul quickly retaliates, spewing a stream of burning green acid from its mouth. Derek is caught off guard by the sudden counterattack, forcing him to block the corrosive blast, as the monster lunges forward with blinding speed to press its advantage. Grunting in pain, Derek shields his face as the acidic claws tear through his clothes, but he quickly recovers, leaping back to put some distance between himself and the beast. He slides across the dirt, admitting that the ghoul is slightly stronger than he initially anticipated, looking down at his torn sleeve and minor scratches with a serious expression. A wild grin spreads across his face as he charges his spear with crackling lightning, leaping back into the fray because a real challenge only makes the fight more fun. Reacting instantly to the incoming danger, Derek braces himself as the green acid flies forward, swinging his spear in a wide arc to slice clean through the corrosive liquid. But the sheer force of the impact still pushes him back a few steps, prompting him to channel crackling blue lightning directly into his weapon for a counterattack. With a massive roar, he unleashes a devastating beam of energy straight at the ghoul, tearing through the monster's defenses and leaving it screeching in absolute agony. Leaping high into the air, Derek prepares to deliver the final crushing blow, mocking the level 115 beast for being surprisingly weak. Acid sizzles harmlessly against his skin, barely even registering as a threat to him, as he wonders if this is really the best this world's system has to offer. Squeezing his spear with a surge of crackling purple lightning, he readies his ultimate strike, telling the monstrous ghoul not to make him laugh before unleashing his power, while the terrified beast can only screech in horror as the energy builds. A blinding pillar of purple light erupts, completely vaporizing the high-level monster in an instant, sending massive shockwaves through the dark forest and shattering the surrounding trees. Standing amidst the rising dust, Derek catches his breath as the battle finally ends. System notifications flood his vision, confirming the kill and granting him several level-ups, but his victory is cut short as he looks down at his ruined clothes. Green acid continues to sizzle on the forest floor, smoking in the quiet clearing, forcing him to sigh in frustration because his armor is now completely destroyed. He quickly stores the damaged gear into his system inventory until he can get it repaired, pulling off his ruined shirt and revealing his toned physique to the empty woods, muttering that he really should have bought more clothes before leaving Earth. Looking at his spare green shirt, he resolves never to wear those medieval tunics. 2 weeks later, the peaceful village of Reina comes into view under a bright sky. Concentrating intensely on his task, young Thomas carefully wipes sweat from his brow before proudly finishing a stylish new haircut for one of the local villagers, holding up his magical clippers with a triumphant grin on his face. This villager admires his new look in the mirror, completely thrilled with the results, enthusiastically telling the young boy to send any other customers his way. Brandy watches from her table, sighing at how easily Thomas has won everyone over, but she quickly threatens him with a sewing needle when he offers to cut her hair, sending the terrified boy scrambling backward with his hands raised in surrender. She sighs again, looking down at her leatherworking tools spread across the table. It turns out she has completely run out of the hides Derek gave her, having used and reused them to death while practicing her leatherworking skills. Thomas agrees, hoping their powerful friend returns soon since his 13th birthday just passed, remembering how his grandpa tried to catch a level 7 frog for him to kill, which he refused because Derek told him to wait for a much better target. Looking out at the horizon, he remains confident that Derek will bring back something amazing. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the ruined remains of Leon's completely devastated village, where a mysterious cloaked traveler slowly steps through the quiet, ruined debris. Swiping their hand through the air, they detect a lingering trace of magical energy, instantly recognizing the dark and corrupting residual presence of the void beast. Clenching their fist, they realize someone defeated it, but sense a second, unfamiliar power, flicking their wrist to track the exact direction of this mysterious new trail. This cloaked archer narrows their eyes, realizing the energy leads straight toward the neighboring village. Back in the forest, Derek continues his journey, still grumbling about his ruined armor, muttering that clearing the Undying Dungeon will be a massive pain before suddenly stopping, looking ahead in absolute disbelief as a very familiar face blocks his path. This adorable horned rabbit is sitting right there in the middle of the trail, thumping its foot on the ground with an incredibly grumpy and annoyed expression. Derek smiles, asking if it followed him because it likes him or for another fight, but the rabbit immediately launches itself like a missile, only to get caught midair. Holding the squirming beast, he warns the little troublemaker to start behaving properly, jokingly threatening to make it Thomas's next target if it refuses to cooperate, which instantly freezes the rabbit in absolute terror as it starts sweating profusely. He pokes its nose, explaining it can tag along but cannot enter the village, asking if it actually understands a single word that is coming out of his mouth. Sighing deeply, Derek realizes he is wasting his breath arguing with a bunny. He gently sets the creature down, deciding to let it tag along anyway, calling it an idiot as he starts jogging down the winding forest path, but quickly decides that calling it idiot or bunny is getting a bit old. This rabbit hops happily behind him, seemingly very pleased with the new arrangement. Resting by a campfire later, Derek brainstorms cute names like Snowball or Bella, but quickly realizes those gentle names do not fit this bloodthirsty beast at all, watching in horror as the rabbit happily devours a level 59 undead forest bear. He brainstorms more options like Dingbat or Beelzebunny, but dismisses them as too weird until a sudden stroke of genius hits him and he smiles very brightly. Kneeling down, he formally announces the perfect new name for his fluffy companion. This rabbit sparkles with joy as Derek officially dubs her with the name Sylvie, before they set off again to find more monsters that need headbutting. 1 week later, the unlikely duo finally reaches the edge of the dense forest. Derek stops near the bridge, holding a small captured creature in his hand, gently explaining to Sylvie that she cannot accompany him into the peaceful village, warning her that her violent tendencies would easily cause a massive town massacre. Sylvie looks up with big, sad eyes as he promises to return in a few days, and Derek smiles warmly, admitting that he is actually going to miss her. Suddenly, Sylvie launches herself forward, delivering a brutal headbutt straight to his face. Derek crashes backward into a tree, screaming at the little psychopath to stay in the forest. Grumbling about the ruined moment, he holds up a level 50 woodland chipmunk before walking up to the village gates and waving to the guard on duty, who immediately yells down, demanding to know his identity and what he wants. Derek simply smiles, telling him not to bother opening the gate as he squats down. With a massive leap, he launches himself effortlessly over the high wooden village wall, sending the shocked guard slipping and losing his balance on the platform. Derek catches the falling guard by the arm mid-air with absolutely perfect precision, smiling as he compliments the man's stylish new haircut and tells him to be careful, leaving the guard stammering in gratitude as Derek leaps down to the ground. He calls out for Thomas, happily announcing his long-awaited return to the village. Thomas and Brandy come running at full speed, nearly knocking over a local villager, who drops his bundle of hay in surprise as the kids rush past, with Thomas excitedly boasting about leveling up his leatherworking skill to level 5. Brandy eagerly asks if he brought back the high-level monster he promised them, prompting Derek to nod with a nervous sweat drop, overwhelmed by their endless questions. Thomas shoves Brandy aside, declaring his dream of becoming incredibly strong like Derek, but Derek quickly silences their non-stop chatter by playfully pinching both of their noses. He chuckles warmly, teasing them about how much they both love to talk, before presenting several high-quality knives and hides to help Thomas unlock a class. He gently pinches Brandy's nose, asking if they have a deal for a special project. Derek asks Thomas if he thought about their previous conversation, getting an eager nod in return. His backpack rustles and squeaks as he hints at a very special surprise waiting for him, promising to meet the excited kid at the front gate tomorrow to finally unlock his system, which sends both of the kids jumping and cheering with absolute joy in the middle of the path. Though Derek quickly adds a condition, asking if anyone can point him toward the nearest local tavern. Pushing open the heavy wooden door, he prepares to enjoy some well-deserved relaxation after his long journey, taking a deep breath of the familiar, nostalgic scent of cheap ale and roasted meat. He walks inside, hoping this new planet actually knows how to brew a decent pint of beer. Taking a relaxed step forward, he smiles as he anticipates a quiet night of drinking. But he suddenly bumps straight into a cloaked stranger, instantly catching him off guard. Derek quickly apologizes for the collision, but the mysterious traveler remains completely silent, sensing a massive, overwhelming wave of dark void energy radiating directly from Derek's body. The stranger's eye glows with a bright golden light, scanning the residual magic with intense focus, prompting Derek to wonder if this formidable archer is actually another high-ranking noble in disguise. When the traveler reveals they have been tracking him, Derek casually tries to correct their grammar, but the archer ignores the joke, narrowing their eyes to ask if he is a void beast, leaving Derek to deny the accusation while wondering how his cover got blown so quickly. Realizing this could cause massive trouble for the village, he tries to play dumb and act clueless, but the persistent traveler keeps pressing him with questions about his origin and current level, before suddenly accusing him of lying and jabbing a glowing finger straight toward his chest. Reacting with lightning-fast reflexes, Derek grabs the stranger's wrist mid-air, completely halting the attack, asking what exactly they plan to do if he actually is a void beast, which prompts the traveler to activate their powerful identify skill, digital numbers swirling in their eyes. A bright golden light sweeps over Derek as the system attempts to analyze his hidden stats, but the skill completely fails, leaving both of them standing in a rather awkward silent standoff. Derek casually breaks the silence, pointing toward the bar and asking if he can finally get his drink, while the bartender welcomes him warmly, revealing that Derek's reputation has already spread through the village. This stunned archer stands in disbelief, realizing Derek must be the powerful warrior who defeated the Void Beast. Ordering a pint of his own, the traveler quietly observes as the friendly bartender introduces himself as Bart. Derek watches the mysterious hunter leave, relieved that a massive tavern brawl was successfully avoided. Bart slides a foaming mug across the counter, asking for 2 copper coins as payment, but since Derek is completely broke, he slams down a high-level badger pelt instead, which absolutely delights the bartender, who immediately offers him a free room on the house. Before he can accept, a familiar voice calls out to him from behind the bar, revealing Mallory, who invites him to stay at her place as thanks for helping her daughter, offering to cook him a warm, delicious stew to show her appreciation for his kindness. Walking together through the bustling village streets, Derek enjoys his cold beer while they chat, casually brushing off her questions about the mysterious hunter who confronted him earlier at the tavern. Mallory warns him to be careful, explaining that the dangerous traveler actually works for the crown, prompting Derek to take a slow sip of his drink, wondering if she means the kingdom's rulers. She explains that the Crown is actually a massive, highly influential organization within the Kingdom of Sideria, operating as an elite restaurant that holds incredible political sway over the entire region, where only the wealthiest nobles and most powerful individuals are ever permitted to dine. She smiles, asking if he has any idea what their most sought-after culinary delicacy is, before revealing that the legendary restaurant actually serves cooked void beasts to its wealthy patrons. Derek instantly spits out his beer in absolute shock, completely stunned by this bizarre revelation as Mallory explains that consuming a void beast grants permanent massive stat bonuses to anyone who eats it. Derek nervously chuckles, suggesting some void beasts must be weak, but she quickly shuts that idea down, reminding him that even a single low-level beast can easily wipe out an entire village. A grim flashback shows the terrifying destruction these monsters cause as helpless villagers flee in terror. Mallory looks at him closely, assuming a powerful warrior like him already knew all of this. Derek sweats nervously under her gaze, trying his best to keep his composure and play it cool. As the sun begins to set, casting a warm golden glow over the peaceful village, the two of them continue their quiet walk back toward her family's cozy home. Night falls and the house is filled with the warm sounds of laughter and happy chatter. Derek happily devours the delicious stew, chugging it straight from the bowl with pure joy, slamming it down on the table and declaring it the absolute best meal he's had in years. Mallory blushes, modestly pointing out that her cooking skill is only at level 8, while the grandfather's attempt to tease his wife's cooking quickly gets shut down with a knife, prompting Thomas to eagerly ask if they are still unlocking his system first thing tomorrow morning. Derek nods in agreement, stating it is perfectly fine, as long as his grandparents approve, and the elderly couple happily gives their consent, knowing how much the boy has looked forward to it. Thomas cheers in absolute triumph, raising his fists in the air with a massive, bright smile. Derek raises a finger, adding one final condition to their deal before they can begin, mentioning that it has been an incredibly long time since he last enjoyed a warm bath, which sends the excited boy running off instantly to start warming up the water for him. This family chuckles warmly at the boy's endless enthusiasm as they finish their dinner together. Derek looks out the window at the peaceful night sky, feeling a rare sense of comfort. Suddenly, Brandy gently taps his arm to get his attention, calling his name softly. And as he turns around, she nervously holds out a small, beautifully crafted item for him. She presents a handmade leather amulet, offering it as a sincere token of her deep gratitude, explaining that working on the hides helped her cope with the painful loss of her father. Derek smiles warmly, accepting the thoughtful gift and thanking her for the incredibly kind gesture. Outside, Thomas loudly complains that he needs more firewood to keep the bathwater warm, leaving Derek to realize that, for the first time in ages, he is no longer alone. This next morning, a beautiful sunrise illuminates the peaceful village as the training session begins. A massive cloud of dust erupts in the fields as Derek dashes forward at incredible speed, carrying a dizzy Thomas on his back before launching them both high into the air. Landing gracefully in a quiet clearing, Derek decides this secluded spot is perfect for their task, grabbing the startled, spinning boy by the shoulders to help him regain his balance. He asks Thomas if he is truly ready to finally unlock his system, handing him a sharp, glowing dagger and warning him to be extremely careful with it. Reaching into his squeaking bag, Derek prepares to pull out the target he captured earlier, holding the bag shut and telling the nervous boy to kill whatever is trapped inside. Thomas nods bravely, gripping the weapon with both hands as he readies his strike. A massive surge of blue magical energy erupts, officially unlocking the great system for Thomas. Derek holds the dagger, smiling as he asks the boy how it feels to level up. Thomas is completely shocked, realizing he just earned an achievement for defeating a level 50 monster, prompting Derek to explain that the weapon was crafted by the same master who made his glaive. Raising his finger, Derek tells the excited kid that he has one very important question. He acknowledges that Thomas wants to leave the village to grow stronger and see the world, reflecting on how he himself has been entirely alone in the dark void for too long. He admits that being alone gets old, asking Thomas if he wants to travel with him. Thomas is completely stunned, his mind racing with excitement at the prospect of a grand adventure, quickly clearing his throat to act cool before eagerly agreeing to join him on his journey. Derek smiles, warning him that traveling together means keeping all of Derek's secrets absolutely safe, which Thomas solemnly promises to do, swearing to guard those secrets with his very life. Derek adds that while he will protect him, Thomas must train hard and never rely on others, demanding absolute, unquestioning obedience whenever he is given a direct order during their travels. Thomas looks up, slightly intimidated but completely ready to accept whatever challenges lie ahead. Derek clarifies that while he isn't evil, he isn't exactly a saint either, prompting Thomas to eagerly declare his desire to travel together on this grand adventure, which Derek officially accepts with a firm handshake, welcoming him to the team. He asks the kid how many skill points he currently has to spend, only to immediately shock him by saying he is about to lose almost all of them, instructing the boy to spend his precious points on meditation and identify right away. Seeing the kid's disappointment, Derek explains that these basic utility skills are actually incredibly powerful, promising that his very last point can be spent on something much more exciting, which leads him to ask what kind of class the boy wants to pursue, advising him to invest in light weapons mastery to match his dream of being fast. Thomas quickly taps his glowing system screen, locking in his final skill choice, before Derek tells him to dump all his stat points into vitality and endurance. This confused boy asks what he means by keeping up, but Derek just walks away, suddenly blasting forward at high speed and leaving the kid eating his dust, declaring it a race that the poor kid is already losing by a mile. Back at the village hall, Thomas collapses in exhaustion while Derek meets with the elders. Derek sighs deeply, placing his hand on the wooden table with a serious expression, warning the group that the silver-ranked adventurers they requested will surely die. Reina looks up in surprise, asking if a silver-ranked team really cannot handle the threat, only for Derek to reveal that the dungeon he found is actually level 100. This shocking news leaves the entire room completely stunned and speechless with fear, as Derek grimly explains that they will need a gold-ranked team of adventurers instead, prompting the elder to immediately agree to write a brand new request for the guild. Derek asks for a map of the area, which the grandfather tells Thomas to fetch, before laying it out to show the locations of all known local dungeons. This map details the specific level limits and monster types for each dangerous zone, allowing Derek to point out exactly where the high-level undead dungeon should be. Asking for permission to write on the map, he receives a quick nod, marking the level 100 zone before asking if he can make a copy. After thanking them, he hands the map back to Reina with a curious question, asking why she is only level 31 despite living near so many dungeons, which prompts her to explain that her rare Tempest Blade class requires massive experience, leaving her with little time to level up while managing her duties as chief. She adds that the village's standard weapons simply cannot withstand high-level combat anyway, but Derek suddenly tosses her a beautifully crafted, high-grade sword out of nowhere, inviting her to join their training tomorrow, much to the young boy's surprise. He promises the legendary weapon is hers to keep if she agrees to train, leaving her completely stunned by his incredible generosity as she admires the blade. She eagerly nods in agreement, accepting the offer to join their morning session, while Derek bids them farewell, heading off to find his new bartend friend. Meanwhile, in a grand castle, Wallace desperately begs his father for elite reinforcements, only to be heavily scolded for wanting to bully a simple border village. This stern noble points out that the village already requested a silver rank team, demanding that Wallace return there and handle the situation without causing further embarrassment, cutting off his son's protest by stepping forward with an incredibly intimidating glare. He commands Wallace to leave his sight immediately, brooking no further arguments, leaving the humiliated young noble to storm out of the room in anger. Walking down the dark hallway, Wallace mutters a dark vow to destroy the adventurers himself. This next morning, Reina nervously asks if he is truly ready for this, while a shirtless Derek stands in the field, telling her to hit him hard, assuring her that he will be perfectly fine even without any armor on. He jokingly adds that he would rather ruin his shorts than lose another shirt, prompting Reina to reluctantly channel her powerful wind magic into the new blade. She decides to hold back slightly to avoid accidentally killing him, unleashing a slash, which sends a massive wave of sharp wind energy flying straight toward him. But Derek just stands there calmly, letting the attack hit him head-on. Thomas watches from the sidelines, sweating profusely and questioning his crazy mentor's sanity. This powerful wind blade strikes Derek's chest, splashing harmlessly away like water, leaving Reina completely shocked by his durability while Thomas cheers in absolute awe. Derek casually brushes it off, telling her not to hold back next time, which prompts her to narrow her eyes, ready to unleash her full power. She charges forward, launching a relentless barrage of magical wind slashes at him, until she completely runs out of mana 10 minutes later, collapsing in exhaustion. Derek tells her to meditate to recover before calling Thomas over for his turn. This excited boy runs up, ready to begin his first real training session, only for Derek to tell him to pick a weapon and try to kill him, which absolutely horrifies the kid, who cannot believe what he is hearing. Derek sighs, pointing out that he just survived 30 wind blades without a scratch, convincing the nervous boy to steel his resolve and try his absolute best. Derek leaps back into a defensive stance, daring the kid to make his move. Screaming at the top of his lungs, Thomas charges forward with a dagger, swinging wildly as Derek effortlessly dodges the attack with a completely bored expression, resulting in a complete miss that leaves them standing awkwardly in the field. A silent breeze blows past as they stare at each other in disappointment. Derek dryly points out that the kid somehow missed a completely stationary target, telling him not to apologize but to simply focus on getting much better, which prompts Thomas to try again, only to miss by an even wider margin. Derek facepalms in frustration, suggesting they try a completely different weapon for his training, ignoring the kid's protests and handing him a spear to practice his thrusts. This marks the beginning of a grueling training routine that lasts for several days. Reina's constant magical attacks help level up both her skills and Derek's magic resistance, while Thomas continues to struggle immensely with mastering the difficult art of daggers, repeatedly dropping his weapon and leaving his mentor sighing in absolute hopeless despair. Surprisingly, the boy shows incredible natural talent when using the sword and spear, while Derek spends his free time hunting forest beasts for Thomas to finish off. Every evening, they return to the village to enjoy a warm, lively dinner together. During one meal, the grandfather quietly asks Derek to go a bit easy on him, while Thomas proudly boasts to Brandy about how much stronger he is getting, leaving the elder to explain that the boy's late father also used daggers. Eventually, the day arrives when Thomas finally reaches level 10 in the forest, prompting Derek to warn him to choose a strong class, not just a cool-looking one. Thomas smiles confidently, assuring his mentor that he knows exactly what to do, before opening his glowing blue system screen to make his highly anticipated choice. Derek watches closely, hoping the system offers the hardworking kid some rare options. With a determined look, Thomas taps the screen to finalize his class selection, unleashing a massive burst of green energy as the class change is completed, proudly flipping a dagger in his hand and catching it with a grin. Derek's eyes narrow as a sudden wave of dread washes directly over him, as Thomas happily announces he chose the standard rogue class just like his dad, leaving Derek to facepalm, wondering why he ignored all the rare growth-type options. Thomas admits he saw the rare options but chose rogue anyway, because his dad was cool, staring fondly at his dagger while remembering his late father's legacy and style, only for Derek to brutally remind him that his dad is dead and he sucks with daggers, openly questioning if he should even bother taking a literal child along on this journey, which prompts Thomas to drop to his knees and beg, desperate to become strong enough to protect people. Derek demands to know how he can trust someone who refuses to follow simple instructions, leaving the tearful boy desperately pleading for just one more chance to prove himself. In a panic, Thomas swears a binding oath on the Great System to keep Derek's secret safe, triggering a glowing blue system notification that immediately solidifies the oath until death, which completely shocks Derek, who recognizes the harsh contract skill from his previous life. Derek asks why the kid would do something so incredibly desperate just to follow him, before warning Thomas that he is officially on his very last strike with him. He tells the boy to pack his bags because they are heading to a dungeon tomorrow morning. Meanwhile, a fancy carriage rattles along the road, heading straight back toward the border village, where Wallace and his elite squad are drinking and complaining about their assignment. One of the female mages whines about having to return to such a filthy border pigsty, while another teammate complains that he only just got the village smell out of his hair, and the blonde woman scoffs, demanding a much better welcoming party than they received last time. While Wallace sits quietly in the corner, his anger visibly boiling over. Suddenly, he snaps and screams at his complaining teammates to shut their mouths, commanding them to stop complaining, promising this whole annoying ordeal will be over in days. Back in the forest, Derek and Thomas approach a swirling green dungeon portal together. As Derek plans to run this level 25 dungeon twice before his own level gets too high, hoping the intense experience will help the kid grow a bit stronger in combat. Thomas looks around in confusion, asking why they have stopped at this specific location, prompting Derek to flash a smug grin and announce they are here to clear it, while the boy panics, wondering how they can possibly enter a level 25 dungeon together. Derek reminds him of the secrets he swore to keep, preparing to show him the first one, stepping forward and placing his hand directly onto the glowing green portal's surface, which reveals a system screen that lists Derek's actual level as a shocking 18. Thomas loses his mind, screaming in absolute disbelief at his mentor's low level. Before realizing this means they can easily run all the lower-level dungeons together, he excitedly assumes Derek will easily protect him from any danger inside the dungeon. But Derek just smirks, asking who said anything about him doing the actual fighting, shoving the terrified kid into the portal, declaring that hands-on survival is the best training. They materialize inside a dark, dripping cave filled with ancient stone formations and moss, where Derek casually asks the kid if he is ready to begin his training, while Thomas trembles with fear, asking if his mentor is truly serious about this insane plan. But Derek points out that he already gave him high-level daggers to fight with, adding that the custom armor Brandy made should easily protect him from basic attacks, and assuring him that even if he gets hurt, his own rejuvenation skill needs leveling anyway, leaving the poor kid to gulp in terror, realizing he is completely on his own now. Derek cheerfully calls it a win-win situation as they venture deeper into the dangerous jungle. Suddenly, a massive flying insect ambushes Thomas, sending him crashing to the ground in panic, and he scrambles to his feet, screaming for help as a giant beetle chases him down, only for a massive centipede to wrap around his body, squeezing the breath out of him, while a giant ant bites down hard on his arm, prompting Thomas to scream for Derek's help. Finally stepping in, Derek uses a spear to slice the giant insect completely in half. Thomas collapses on the grass, gasping for air and asking what was supposed to be fun. Derek kneels down with a grin, pointing out that the kid didn't actually die today, asking to see the boy's broken arm, completely ignoring his painful groans and complaints. Green magic flares as Derek casts his rejuvenation skill directly on the painful injury, instantly healing the bone and leaving Thomas staring at his arm in absolute shock, before Derek claps him on the shoulder, telling him to get right back out there. Thomas reluctantly pushes himself up, realizing there is no escaping this brutal training, while Derek cheers him on, prompting the kid to mutter that his mentor is seriously insane. Creeping through the brush, Thomas spots a massive rhinoceros beetle monster chittering nearby in a clearing, and he steals his resolve and grips his daggers, telling himself this is his big chance, dashing forward with a sudden burst of speed to launch a surprise attack on it. But the giant beetle senses him at the very last second, turning its head toward him. Thomas swings wildly, completely missing the target as his blade cuts through empty air, leaving Derek to facepalm in absolute disappointment at the kid's terrible form, as the beetle immediately counters, smacking the boy away with its massive horn, sending him tumbling across the dirt with a painful grunt and a cloud of dust. This monster screeches, preparing to crush the helpless boy under its heavy legs in the dirt, but Derek yells at him to dodge, prompting Thomas to roll away just as the attack slams down. Derek cheers him on while Thomas scrambles back to his feet to face the beast, and the giant beetle charges forward again, kicking up a massive cloud of dust, slamming directly into the kid and sending him flying backward into a nearby tree. Thomas realizes his custom armor successfully absorbed the brunt of that heavy impact, silently thanking Brandy as he grips his dagger and resolves to finish this fight now, leaping into the air and delivering a powerful slash that cuts the beetle's horn, sending a spray of yellow fluid flying as the monster screeches in absolute agony. Landing on its back, Thomas drives his dagger deep into the beast's head with all his might, and the beetle collapses dead, leaving the exhausted boy to slump to the ground, huffing. He admits it wasn't pretty, but it was still a massive improvement over his previous attempt, as Derek walks over, offering to review his rather spectacular and messy performance. Thomas sheepishly guesses he put too much power into his swing, throwing off his balance. But Derek tells him he was wrong before he even reached the beetle's location, asking the boy why he didn't use his class's basic stealth skill to sneak up. Thomas's brain completely short-circuits as he tries to process the obvious question he was asked, and a silent breeze blows past as the boy stands there in awkward silence in the woods, sweating profusely as he slowly looks up at his waiting and unimpressed mentor. He nervously confesses that he completely forgot he even had a stealth skill to use, leaving Derek utterly dumbfounded, asking how he forgot the only skill his chosen class has. While the embarrassed kid awkwardly smiles and confirms his sheer stupidity to his mentor, and Derek sighs deeply, realizing his new student is actually dumb as hell. Meanwhile, Wallace's carriage finally halts outside the wooden gates of the border village, as a heavily armored boot steps down onto the dusty ground of the village. A village guard on the wall calls out, demanding they state their names immediately, only to be blasted off the wall by a massive wave of blue wind magic, and the wooden gates are violently blown open with a deafening and terrifying boom. This terrified villagers panic, wondering why the arrogant adventurers have returned to attack them, while Wallace and his elite squad march through the smoke, calling the villagers peasants. As Wallace flashes a sinister smile, declaring they are here to save them from danger. Unimpressed, Reyna draws her sword, channeling her powerful wind magic into the blade. This sharp energy crackles around her weapon as she steps forward to confront them, declaring that if this is their idea of aid, they want absolutely none of it, and she unleashes her full aura, commanding Wallace to leave her village immediately. But Wallace just glares back at her with a dark, mocking grin on his face. Inside the level 25 insect dungeon, a level 18 spider ant screeches as it prepares to strike, but Thomas quickly reacts, narrowly dodging the monster's massive razor-sharp legs just in time, realizing that after days of grinding in this hell, he has finally reached level 17. Believing he can easily handle a single bug now, the kid charges forward with a loud battle cry, driving his blade deep into the creature's neck as a fountain of yellow fluid erupts, which leaves him celebrating his first successful solo kill with a massive proud grin on his face. Suddenly, Derek yells a warning as another massive insect sneaks up right behind the distracted boy, charging forward at full speed to crush the helpless kid before he can even react. And to make matters worse, Thomas panics as he realizes his dagger is completely stuck inside the dead monster. Screaming for help, the terrified boy can only watch as the massive beast lunges directly at him. Fortunately, Derek steps in with a devastating strike, completely obliterating the threat in a single blow, leaving Thomas to collapse onto the dirt while complaining about how close he was to succeeding, muttering that a longer weapon with better leverage would have easily saved him from that disaster. Staring at his sticky blade, the kid finally admits that he is simply not cut out for daggers, which prompts Derek to toss his weapon in the air, smugly agreeing with the boy's sudden realization. Casting a quick healing spell to patch up the kid's injuries, Derek notes his impressive progress, telling him that since they cleared out the rest of the cave, he is finally ready, leading the young apprentice directly to the massive, lightning-shrouded boss room gate at the end of the cave. Derek double-checks the plan, reminding the kid to use stealth and aim straight for the head, and with a final warning not to mess up, they step through the glowing portal together. Instantly, a massive gust of wind cuts through the air as the boss launches a surprise attack, but Derek easily blocks the blow, shielding his startled student from the sudden impact. Looking up at the terrifying giant insect boss, Thomas immediately begins to doubt his own abilities, prompting Derek to change the plan, deciding to hold the beast down so the kid can get the final blow. With a burst of blue energy, the mentor dashes forward to confront the massive creature head-on, grabbing the giant boss by its neck and completely halting its momentum with sheer physical strength, flashing a confident smirk as he prepares to slam the beast into the dirt. A massive shockwave erupts as Derek pins the giant insect to the ground with absolute ease, yelling for Tommy to take action while he keeps the struggling monster completely immobilized. Stealing his resolve, the young rogue grips his weapon, his eyes glowing with newfound determination, and he rushes forward at full speed, aiming directly for the pinned monster's weak spot, driving his dagger deep into the boss's head with a powerful surge of purple energy. This giant beast instantly goes limp, its massive legs collapsing as the life drains from its body, before dissolving into a beautiful shower of glowing blue particles that fill the entire cavern. A glowing system notification appears in the air, officially declaring the dungeon boss has been defeated. Thomas cheers in absolute joy, thrilled that he finally survived and cleared his very first dungeon, though Derek quickly ruins the moment by warning him that things will only get harder from here. He adds that they should head back now, since the kid's grandmother is probably worried sick, but Thomas just stands there in awkward silence, staring down at the dead boss's remains. Wondering what is taking so long, Derek turns around to see what the kid is doing, only to find his student struggling with all his might to pull his weapon free. Grunting in frustration, Thomas admits his dagger is stuck once again, kicking the monster's shell in annoyance. Meanwhile, the system rewards Derek with a new skill called Cure Toxin, allowing him to remove poisons, along with 2 valuable skill points for completing his very first dungeon run as an explorer. With the rewards claimed, Derek asks if he is ready to head back, and Thomas eagerly agrees. Walking back at sunset, the kid admits he finally understands why daggers are such a terrible choice, prompting Derek to promise him a powerful spear once he finally reaches level 25. Suddenly, Derek stops dead in his tracks, his relaxed expression instantly turning dead serious. Noticing that the village gates are completely unguarded, with several fancy carriages parked outside the entrance, sensing that something is horribly wrong, his eyes glow with a cold, menacing blue light. Rushing through the gates, they find the village in ruins with destructive wind magic lingering in the air, and Derek sprints forward in a panic, desperately calling out for Reina and Mallory. He finds Mallory lying unconscious on the ground, her system status showing she is barely alive, while Reina is in critical condition, with a terrifying timer showing she only has 13 minutes left. Thomas catches up, completely horrified by the sudden devastation and asking what could have happened here. Quickly activating his healing magic, Derek stabilizes the wounded women and assures the kid they will survive. Before placing a hand on Thomas's head and firmly telling him to stay right there, trembling with fear, the boy asks where his mentor is going in such a hurry, only to see Derek's eyes flashing with pure, unadulterated rage as he vows to find the culprits. Meanwhile, a bleeding Reina gasps for air on the ground, a sharp sword held directly to her throat. Wallace stands over her, arrogantly declaring that all of this suffering is entirely their own fault, before sentencing her to death by beheading in the name of his noble house. As the executioner raises his blade to strike, a dark shadow looms over the entire scene, and a powerful purple whip of energy suddenly wraps around the guard's sword, stopping it mid-air. Derek's cold voice echoes through the plaza, warning them that if they touch anyone else, he will personally end their lives, unleashing a massive, terrifying aura of dark purple energy. Terrified by the sudden pressure, Wallace points frantically and orders his men to kill him immediately. Derek stands completely unfazed, his dark energy swirling violently as the elite guards prepare to charge, and one of the sword-wielding attackers lunges forward, aiming a lethal strike directly at his neck, only for Derek to effortlessly counter, unleashing a brutal strike that sends the attacker flying back. This guard crashes heavily onto the dirt, completely defeated and coughing up blood from the impact. Horrified by her teammates' defeat, the female fire mage screams in absolute rage at the peasant, channeling a massive amount of destructive fire magic into her hands as her eyes glow bright orange, screaming that she will burn him to ashes for daring to stand against them. She unleashes a colossal blast of fire, engulfing the entire street in a massive wave of flames. This devastating explosion tears through the village, kicking up a massive cloud of smoke and debris, leaving the mage to huff in exhaustion. Confident that her attack completely vaporized her target, she sheds a tear, believing she has successfully avenged her fallen comrade with that strike, while Wallace and his remaining guard watch the smoke, wondering if the threat is finally gone. But suddenly, a terrifying silhouette with glowing purple eyes begins to emerge from the raging inferno. Derek casually walks out of the flames, completely untouched and without a single scratch on his clothes, leaving Wallace to panic, screaming at his remaining archer to shoot the monster down immediately. A high-speed arrow whistles through the air, aimed directly at Derek's head, but he casually catches the projectile out of mid-air with a single effortless hand movement. This archer's face pales in absolute terror, realizing they are dealing with a literal monster, and he immediately decides to flee, leaping onto the rooftops to escape the battlefield, only for Derek to hurl the arrow back with lethal precision, piercing the archer's head instantly. This lifeless body of the archer falls from the roof, crashing heavily onto the ground below. Richard and the terrified villagers rush out, desperately trying to hold Derek back from causing more bloodshed, begging him to stop because these people are powerful nobles who cannot be touched. But Derek coldly replies that they already had their chance, and that chance is now officially gone. His eyes glow with a terrifying purple light, completely consumed by a desire for absolute vengeance. Desperate to survive, the last remaining guard charges forward with a loud, terrified scream. But Derek easily blocks the incoming sword strike with his bare hand, shocking his opponent. This guard stares in absolute disbelief as Derek grips the sharp blade without taking any damage, before shattering the weapon into pieces with a sudden, violent burst of purple energy. Derek casually steps past the defeated guard, leaving him to collapse onto the dirt in agony, which leaves Wallace grinding his teeth in rage, calling his entire elite squad completely useless, unleashing his full power. The noble channels a massive torrent of blue wind magic around his body, floating into the air while screaming that he will show them the true power of superior noble blood. Activating his void magic with a cold smirk, Derek prepares to unleash his ultimate power, and a colossal pillar of dark purple energy erupts, completely swallowing the noble's wind attack, leaving Wallace dangling helplessly in the air as Derek grips him tightly by the throat. Terrified for his life, the arrogant noble gasps for air and begs to be let go, but Derek coldly replies that he has no intention of letting him leave this place alive. Squeezing his grip, the Dark Warrior ignores the noble's desperate struggles as he begins to choke, forcing Wallace to weakly plead for mercy while his vision starts to fade away. Suddenly, the remaining Fire Mage holds a flame blade to Richard's throat, demanding Wallace's release, prompting the old man to beg Derek to stop before things get even worse, warning him that the royal punishment for harming high-ranking nobles is absolutely severe. Derek pauses in silence, staring back at the hostage situation with a calm expression, which only makes the arrogant mage smirk, thinking she finally has the upper hand, while Richard desperately pleads that the entire village will be executed if Wallace dies. Screaming for Derek to drop her leader, the mage prepares to strike the old man, only for a sharp blade to suddenly pierce straight through her chest from behind, as Leon stands over her with a cold glare, telling her to let them try. This brave chieftain declares that his duty is to protect his people, letting her body slump. Turning his attention back to his captive, Derek keeps a firm grip on the trembling noble, asking if he will swear there will be no retaliation if he is set free, and Wallace frantically nods, crying out and swearing anything just to save his own skin. Smiling coldly, Derek accepts the answer before deciding to end the threat once and for all, snapping the noble's neck with a sudden, brutal twist that echoes through the quiet plaza, leaving Richard to gasp in absolute horror, realizing the point of no return has passed, and Wallace's lifeless body falls heavily onto the dirt as the conflict finally ends. Derek casually shrugs it off, joking that his hand simply slipped during the tense moment. Walking over to the unconscious Reina, he looks down at her pale, wounded face, gently lifting her up to ensure she is still breathing after the brutal battle, before carrying her carefully in his arms to bring her to a safe place. Walking past the whispering villagers who watch him with a mixture of awe and terror. While Leon helps Richard to his feet, the old man muttering that they are doomed. This stunned crowd parts in silence as Derek carries the wounded woman through the streets, heading straight toward the village chief's residence to find a quiet place for her recovery. Leon quickly takes charge, telling the panicked villagers to stop staring and start cleaning up, and everyone immediately gets to work clearing the debris and hiding the evidence of battle. Inside the quiet residence, Derek sits by the fireplace while Reina rests on the sofa. She lies there peacefully, her breathing steady as the healing magic does its work, while Derek watches over her, waiting patiently for her to finally wake up. Suddenly, a massive wave of blue system notifications begins to appear before his eyes, showing he gained massive experience from defeating high-level opponents and leveled up, leaving him to groan in frustration about being the first person mad about leveling up. Reina slowly opens her eyes, weakly calling out his name as she regains consciousness, sitting up with a pained expression to ask if the village is finally safe, and Derek reassures her that everything is fine, telling her to rest easy now. Sighing in relief, she collapses back onto the cushions, thanking him for saving them, but he jokingly claims he did nothing, teasing that the nobles just spontaneously died. Reina grabs his arm in a panic, reminding him that those people were powerful nobles, warning him that if the kingdom ever finds out, the entire village will hang, prompting Derek to calmly reply that they simply won't let anyone find out, explaining that he already has a plan, provided everyone keeps their mouths shut. Just then, Leon enters the room and ushers the rest of the group inside. He reports that the noble bodies are hidden and the drivers swore system oaths, which Derek appreciates, planning to hide the evidence in his storage bracelet later. But Richard steps forward, anxiously asking how they are going to survive this mess, wishing Derek had just listened to him and let the noble leader live. Derek tells them not to worry, confidently declaring that he has a solid plan, though he admits he cannot pull off this massive cover-up entirely on his own. Looking around the room before revealing that he needs more than just their help, he needs the cooperation of every single person living in the entire village. Turning to Richard, he asks how long they have before an investigation team arrives, and the old man estimates they have anywhere from a few days to weeks. Derek decides they must hold a meeting to explain the stakes to the villagers, presenting a cover story where the nobles bought the map and left immediately, claiming they barely even stepped foot in the village before heading to the dungeon. He apologizes to Richard for losing his map, but the old man accepts it before Derek turns to the group, demanding system oaths of secrecy from everyone, which surprises Leon, who asks why they need to swear to the system, and Derek explains it is the same binding oath Thomas took to protect secrets. Leon refuses, stating that while he respects Derek, he cannot bind himself like that, and Richard agrees, admitting he has seen the terrible things system oaths can do. Reina looks up, asking if swearing this oath will truly keep the village safe. Derek firmly promises to protect them to the absolute best of his ability, prompting Reina to agree, stating she does not need an oath to trust him, while Mallory eagerly steps forward, declaring she will gladly swear the oath too, leaving Derek to thank the girls for their incredible trust and loyalty to him, while telling the men he understands their choice, letting them stay for the plan. A bright blue light flashes as the system officially registers their binding oaths, and Reina, now fully recovered, sits up and asks what the plan actually is. Smirking confidently, Derek begins to explain his elaborate cover story to the group, projecting an illusion of the nobles politely receiving the map from the village chief, before showing them heading straight toward the dangerous level 100 dungeon. This story claims they valiantly fought to stop a massive dungeon overflow event, battling hordes of undead monsters to protect the surrounding lands from destruction, but unfortunately, the entire elite team was wiped out by the powerful boss, leaving the noble leader to barely escape, only to bleed out in the woods, dying a tragic hero who sacrificed his life to save the entire region. Derek laughs, saying that is exactly what the official investigators will be told, leaving the room in a stunned silent pause as they process the story, before everyone screams in absolute disbelief at his ridiculously bold and detailed lie. Sometime later, Derek gathers the group outside, asking if everyone is packed and ready, but Reina questions why they are heading to a level 50 beast dungeon instead. Derek explains they will tackle the harder dungeons once they are all much stronger, adding that this is the perfect opportunity for them to level up quickly, while secretly wanting to test some theories about the system's class mechanics. Knowing that a person's experiences before level 10 heavily influence their future class, and if his theory is correct, Mallory could unlock an incredibly rare class. Brandy asks if they are just going to clear low-level dungeons while waiting, but Derek just winks, telling her to trust him and she will understand, promising to hand-feed them experience points so they do not have to struggle. And with a sudden movement, he grabs Mallory to speed up their travel, carrying her on his back as they set off toward their next adventure. Carrying Mallory on his back, Derek sprints forward at breakneck speed while the others struggle to keep up, leaving a trail of dust behind them as they race down the winding mountain path, until they finally arrive at the entrance of the level 50 beast dungeon, where Brandy immediately complains that her legs have completely turned to jelly on the bridge, prompting Derek to remind them of their oath before preparing to open the gate, tapping the glowing blue system interface to officially register their party for the raid, which displays everyone's current levels and reveals that Derek is only level 30, leaving Reina completely dumbfounded that his level is actually lower than her own, though Derek just chuckles and promises to explain his little secret another day, before stepping forward to activate the portal and lead them straight into the dungeon. This group instantly teleports inside, finding themselves standing before a small stone safe house, where Derek cautiously peeks out the door to scan the surrounding area before turning back to explain his highly efficient leveling strategy to the team, planning to head outside alone and beat the local monsters to an inch of their lives, so he can drag them back for Thomas and Mallory to easily finish off, advising Mallory to prepare for her class upgrade while telling Thomas to ditch the daggers, while deciding that Reina is strong enough to fight alongside him in the wild, though he warns her to retreat to safety if things ever get too dangerous, prompting Brandy to eagerly ask what her highly anticipated role in this plan is, only for Derek to bluntly tell her that she will be doing absolutely nothing. Well, except for practicing her crafting skills on a massive pile of monster hides. Before Derek turns to Mallory and asks if her current spear is really her best weapon, which she confirms, explaining that decent gear was incredibly hard to find in their village, prompting Derek to casually dump a massive pile of high-grade weapons onto the floor, leaving the entire group staring in absolute awe at the legendary arsenal before them. While Derek admits he never really had any use for these extra toys anyway, handing Mallory a beautiful high-quality spear that perfectly matches her fighting style, before showing Thomas how to activate his new weapon, which instantly shoots chaotic energy beams, laughing at the sudden chaos while tossing him a few extra daggers just in case, though he quickly shuts down Thomas's greedy request, reminding him he already got a spear. With everyone fully geared up, Derek asks Reina if she is ready to head out, and she confidently nods as they step out of the safe house together, immediately coming face to face with a pack of massive red-furred horned beasts, who growl and snort aggressively as they prepare to tear the intruders apart. But Derek just smirks, excited to finally have some real fun in this place, as the entire horde of monsters charges forward in a wild, earth-shaking stampede. Moving like a blur, Derek and Reina easily dodge the initial rush and strike back, with Derek slamming a massive beast into the dirt to knock it out cold before dragging the dazed monster back to the safe house where it groans helplessly, allowing Thomas to stand over it with his new weapon and deliver the final blow. Inside, Mallory also puts her new spear to good use, finishing off another beast, while outside, Reina unleashes a powerful slash that sends another monster crashing down, leaving Derek to casually sit on a defeated beast while praising her impressive combat skills. With one final decisive strike, the last of the captured monsters is defeated, allowing both Thomas and Mallory to successfully reach level 25 in record time, which prompts Derek to clap and tell them to carefully review their class upgrade options, urging Thomas to check his system screen to see what path he can choose, and the boy gasps in shock upon realizing he was offered the rare Soul Spear class, explaining that it allows him to project energy extensions of his spear for piercing damage, though he suddenly looks down, sadly wishing his father could have seen this moment. Mallory gently comforts him, reminding him that his father's spirit will always be with him, before revealing that she unlocked an uncommon growth-type class called Ohm's Fury, which focuses on strength and endurance to deliver devastating, crushing blows with her staff, making Derek smile warmly as he realizes everyone is progressing even better than expected, reflecting on how a little outside help can completely change someone's destiny. Curious about his own progress, Derek decides to open his status screen to check his level, only to find a flashing notification stating he has also reached level 25. Realizing he actually hit this milestone back when he defeated those arrogant nobles, which means he can finally upgrade his own powerful class right now. A bright purple light erupts as his champion of the Void class successfully upgrades, granting him massive stat points and unlocking two highly anticipated new skills, starting with Void Shift, which allows him to move through space out of time, and Void Sense, a passive skill that connects him directly to the surrounding void, leaving him highly impressed by the sheer utility and power of these new abilities. As he eagerly taps the screen to unlock both of them immediately, suddenly his eyes widen in shock as a strange sensation washes over him, raising his hand as he realizes he can now feel everything in the surrounding space, clenching his fist in pure excitement over this incredible new level of perception, though he decides to wait until he is alone to test out Void Shift, just as Reina approaches with a confident grin, asking if he is ready for round 2. This kid's cheer in agreement, fully energized and ready to keep farming experience points, prompting Derek and Reina to head back out to hunt down more monsters, quickly clashing with another wave of beasts as they tear through their ranks, spinning and slashing with perfect coordination to keep the monsters completely overwhelmed, with Derek leaping off a massive tree trunk to deliver a devastating aerial strike, crushing a beast into the dirt while Reina finishes off the remaining targets, though she is left huffing and puffing from the sheer exhaustion of the battle, while Derek's expression suddenly turns serious as he senses a massive presence approaching, as the ground begins to rumble violently, revealing a colossal horned beast, who huffs heavily as it glares down at them with glowing red eyes. A system screen identifies the monster as Ironhoof, a level 65 boss, prompting Derek to tell Reina to head back to the cabin while he handles this, which she gladly accepts, leaving Derek to face the massive beast entirely alone, noting with a smirk that the boss is only 30 levels higher than him, promising to go easy on it while testing out his brand new void skills as the colossal monster roars and swings its massive axe with terrifying force, shattering the ground in a massive explosion of dust that Derek easily dodges, before instantly activating Void Shift to phase completely out of the physical world. He suddenly finds himself in a silent, starry void where everything is completely frozen, leaving him to wonder if his new skill has actually stopped time itself, as he casually walks up to the frozen boss and taps its massive arm, confirming that the giant monster is indeed completely suspended in midair, before noticing several glowing purple portals floating silently around the frozen space, prompting him to curiously reach out and stick his hand into one of them, only to feel a sudden poke on the back of his own head, jumping back in surprise as he realizes his hand came out of another portal, staring at his hands in realization as he connects the dots on how this works, before laughing hysterically at the incredible combat potential of these connected portals, scratching his head through a portal while admitting it will take some getting used to, only for a sudden system warning to flash, revealing his mana is already down to 10%. Deactivating his Void Shift, Derek prepares to drop back into the physical world, landing right as the giant beast's massive axe smashes the empty dirt behind him, which leaves the colossal monster looking around in absolute confusion at its missing target. Our boy just smirks and points at his eye, teasing the boss for completely missing, prompting the enraged monster to charge forward again with another wild overhead swing, though Derek easily ducks under the massive blade with effortless fluid grace, blocking the follow-up strike with his spear to create a massive shockwave between them, before telling the giant beast to slow down while he activates his meditation skill. Closing his eyes, he focuses on recovering his depleted mana right in the middle of combat, challenging the frustrated monster to try its absolute best on the next round. Instantly activating Void Shift again, he vanishes into a swirling vortex of purple energy, leaving the beast to swing at thin air while he reappears safely behind it, as the monster snorts in pure frustration while Derek prepares his next teleportation trick. He steps through another portal, dropping directly above the beast to keep it guessing, before sinking completely back into the void where no physical attacks can touch him, leaving the giant to slam its weapon into the dirt over and over again. Sitting casually on a nearby cliff, Derek watches the monster tire itself out completely before teleporting rapidly around the battlefield to leave the beast totally disoriented and exhausted, until he finally delivers a devastating, earth-shattering strike that splits the battlefield in two, leaving the colossal boss growling in agony as its health bar completely plummets. With one final decisive leap, Derek drives his spear straight through the monster's chest, officially clearing the dungeon and earning a massive level up in the process. A glowing scroll floats into his hand, identified as a rare scroll of restoration, though he just frowns, slightly disappointed by the relatively basic rewards of this place. Mallory approaches him with tears in her eyes, holding a scroll of resurrection, sobbing quietly as she wishes she had obtained this item before Travis passed away. Watching her grief, Derek silently reflects on how brutally unfair the system can be, while Raina and Thomas excitedly show off their own high-grade skill scrolls. Brandy reveals she received a contract scroll, which binds a beast to the user's soul, prompting Derek to stare in realization as a wild idea pops into his head, remembering that incredibly psychotic fluffy bunny he encountered back in the forest, which makes him realize he actually wants to try taming the dangerous little creature. He awkwardly scratches his head, asking Brandy if he can have her contract scroll, and she happily hands it over with a bright, cheerful smile on her face, reminding him that he has done nothing but save their lives since they met. Derek admits he is not used to people being so genuinely nice to him, but Mallory tells him to get used to it before asking about their next target, ignoring Brandy's complaints about her jelly legs as they head toward the next bridge. This system screen flashes to announce they are officially entering the next zone, arriving at the level 50 fire dungeon, surrounded by rivers of flowing lava. Massive lava crabs immediately emerge from the molten rock, snapping their giant claws, prompting Derek to tell Raina to lead the charge just like they practiced, and she confidently draws her blade, ready to slice through the fiery horde, while Derek uses Void Shift to slam a crab, leveling up his skill instantly. Raina unleashes a powerful water slash, carving through the monsters with incredible speed, which earns her a level up for her devastating Windblade ability. Mallory swings her heavy staff, crushing another lava crab and gaining a level, while Thomas delivers a precise spear strike to finish off the remaining enemies. Next, they enter the level 45 feathered dungeon, battling swarms of flying beasts, where Derek casually rides a giant bird while leveling up his meditation skill, allowing Thomas to practice his soul spear while Brandy gathers feathers for crafting. They quickly move on to the level 55 underwater dungeon, swimming past glowing jellyfish, until a colossal sea monster suddenly emerges and swallows Derek whole in one bite, leaving Raina screaming in absolute panic as she watches him disappear underwater. But a massive glowing shark swims by, completely unaware of the danger is inside, before suddenly freezing in pain as a powerful energy surge erupts from its stomach, allowing Derek to burst free while leveling up his Channel Void skill and style. Their journey continues into the level 50 flower dungeon, covered in beautiful purple flora, though Raina cautiously looks around, wondering where the local monsters are hiding, just as a terrifying giant plant beast rises silently from the ground behind them. 3 days after clearing the beast dungeon, the group climbs up a steep mountain path, with Mallory happily noting that she feels incredibly energized and completely free of soreness, which Derek attributes to the power of high stats and proper meditation techniques. He opens his status screen, eager to finally allocate his massive pool of points, laughing in disbelief upon seeing that he has 618 unspent points to distribute, planning to raise his strength and dexterity to unlock even more free skills. In his mind, he imagines himself becoming an incredibly buff, flexible powerhouse, making Thomas look confused, before dumping his points into strength, dexterity, and wisdom to unlock a new achievement. Flexing his newly buffed arm, Derek grins at the sudden surge of raw power, as the system presents him with a list of available offensive skills to choose, quickly dismissing Glass Cannon and Rapid Movement as completely useless for his current build, leaving Sweeping Slash, Whirlwind, and Multi-Strike as his final 3 options to consider. He carefully weighs the pros and cons of each skill before making his choice, realizing that Sweeping Slash will likely merge with his existing abilities for maximum damage, deciding to select Sweeping Slash and Multi-Strike to complete his devastating arsenal. He taps the screen, successfully learning both skills and reducing his remaining points, which triggers a system notification as it detects a dormant skill ready to merge. Ignoring the sudden pain of the skill merger, Derek successfully combines his powers, while Reina looks back in confusion as a strange blue aura surrounds him, prompting him to raise his spear as crackling energy begins to coat the blade. He grins confidently, eager to test out the limits of his newly merged skill, telling the rest of the group to step back and give him some room. As crackling blue lightning wraps tightly around his weapon with terrifying intensity, before he unleashes a powerful roar and swings the spear with all his might, a massive crescent-shaped sweeping slash erupts, tearing through the ground with explosive force, shattering the landscape and creating a colossal shockwave that rumbles through the entire valley. This rest of the party stands completely frozen, staring in absolute awe at the destruction, which has left a massive smoking canyon carved directly into the earth before them. Derek just smiles, confidently declaring that they are finally ready for the Undying Dungeon. Meanwhile, in a luxurious dining hall, a wealthy noble sits alone eating a lavish dinner, chewing his food slowly with a deeply concerned expression on his face, asking his servant if there has been any word from his missing son. This servant reports that the last message placed him near the mountain safe house, prompting the noble to angrily stab his food as he realizes something is wrong. Calling out to his elite armored knight, Bronson, who stands silently in the shadows. Bronson steps forward, his heavy armor clanking as he awaits his lord's command, as the noble furiously orders him to go out and find his missing son. Back with our heroes, they arrive at the entrance of the level 100 Undying Dungeon, where Derek notes that the dark energy here feels far more dangerous than before, telling the group he will handle this raid alone while they wait in safety. Gathering around the glowing portal, Derek and his party confirm they are ready to jump in as the system screen flashes a countdown to transport them directly into the dungeon, arriving inside a massive, eerie stone temple with a towering skull gate looming above them. He warns the group to stay put and keep the heavy stone doors tightly shut before stepping out alone into a massive, fog-covered graveyard under a bright full moon. Looking around the creepy ruins, he mutters that a graveyard is certainly fitting for this place, but his thoughts are cut short when a massive skeletal hand bursts from the dirt, prompting him to stretch his arms while complaining about how much he hates fighting skeletons. A massive horde of level 100 skeleton warriors rises from the graves with weapons drawn, while a swarm of level 98 vampire bats screeches down from the dark sky above. Derek just sighs, realizing this high-level dungeon is going to give him a massive level boost, as a skeleton warrior lunges forward with a rusty blade that he easily dodges backward, though the monster quickly follows up with a swift slash that narrowly misses his chest, leaving him slightly surprised when a sudden graze actually manages to draw some blood. This skeleton slams its sword down, making him realize these level 100 mobs are no joke, which prompts his eyes to glow blue as he decides to take things a bit seriously. Crackling blue lightning wraps around his hand as he prepares to unleash a devastating skill, executing a massive sweeping strike that shatters several skeleton warriors into tiny bone fragments. Another skeleton lunges, but he grabs it by the neck and channels his purple void energy, detonating the monster in a burst of light that instantly triggers a level up notification. He spins his spear with effortless grace, ready to deal with the remaining undead pests, before gathering swirling blue energy in his palm to target the annoying flying bats, firing a barrage of precise energy beams that easily shoots them down from the sky. A stray bat tries to dive bomb him, but he casually swats it away with a slash, earning another level up before suddenly sensing a strange vibration coming from directly below him. Multiple skeletal hands and sharp swords burst through the ground in a surprise ambush, but Derek instantly activates a freeze skill, halting the incoming blades mid-air with ease. He steps back as the frozen weapons crumble, casually thinking this dungeon isn't too bad, boasting that he can easily handle these numbers despite the dungeon's severe overflow state, only to stop in his tracks as a loud, ominous cracking sound echoes behind him. To his absolute annoyance, the shattered skeletons begin putting their broken bones back together, leaving him to watch the entire graveyard reassemble itself with a series of clicking sounds. He pauses, suddenly noticing that one specific skeleton is not moving at all, realizing that the monster he destroyed using his Channel Void skill is staying completely dead. Grinning at this discovery, he coats his entire body in a thick aura of purple energy, leaping high into the air while leaving a brilliant trail of light behind him, raising his spear as it crackles with the dark soul-destroying power of the void, before slamming it down to unleash a massive purple pillar that engulfs the graveyard. Multiple level-up notifications stack up as the skeletons are permanently erased from existence. Derek stands amidst the sizzling remains, satisfied to see that they are finally staying dead. Cracking his neck with a confident smile, he declares he is ready for round two, just as a deep, rumbling groan echoes across the fog-covered graveyard once again, cracking the stone ground open violently as a brand new threat prepares to emerge. Green explosions erupt from the earth, sending dirt and shattered tombstones flying into the air as a terrifying, glowing acidic ghoul bursts out to join the battle at level 112. This toxic monsters roar, dripping with green slime as they prepare to swarm him, though Derek just smirks, noting he was wondering when the real challenge would show up. He grips his spear tightly, channeling crackling blue lightning through his arm once more, as the ghouls charge forward at high speed while he stands his ground completely unfazed. He unleashes a massive vertical beam of energy, launching the charging monsters into the sky, catching his breath for a brief second before following up with his next big move, activating his multi-strike skill to shred the airborne ghouls with a flurry of slashes. Multiple level-up screens flash before him, announcing that he has officially reached level 50, leaving him slightly surprised by how incredibly fast he is progressing through this dungeon. Suddenly, a pair of creepy, clawed hands emerges silently from the shadows behind him. As a massive ghoul sneaks up while he is distracted by his floating system screens, though he casually comments that the system is growing on him, ignoring the danger, before delivering a blinding, overhead slash that cleaves the giant monster completely in half. He drives his spear into the ground, complaining about why nothing here can stay dead, as the sliced ghouls slowly stand back up, their bodies knitting together with slime. A massive clock tower bell begins to toll loudly, echoing throughout the entire graveyard, prompting Derek to look up as he finally realizes the source of this endless resurrection. A flaming, red-eyed skeletal moth floats down from the top of the clock tower, identified by the system as a lich, who roars to command the undead to rise. This ghouls screech in a frenzy, their power boosted by the boss's dark magic, while all the shattered skeletons in the graveyard begin to rattle and assemble once more. Derek sighs in pure annoyance as a skeleton reassembles itself right in front of him, delivering a powerful purple-infused punch that shatters the monster's ribcage into dust. He kicks another skull away, complaining about how annoying it is to kill things twice, before glaring up at the floating boss and asking if they can finally finish this. He notes that his friends are probably getting tired of waiting for him outside as the flaming lich commands him to die while descending with chains of fire, prompting the boosted ghouls and skeletons to charge at him all at once. Derek dashes forward, leaving a trail of purple energy as he evades their attacks, weaving through the horde to slice multiple enemies with fluid, rapid spear strikes. Activating multi-strike, he leaps into the air and shreds a giant ghoul into pieces, before his eyes glow a deep purple as he prepares to use Channel Void, leaving the Lich to watch in shock as Derek targets him directly with his power. He claps his hands together, focusing a massive burst of energy directly at the boss as the Void energy wraps around the Lich's limbs, binding him tightly in place. This Lich desperately tries to summon more red energy chains to defend himself, but Derek just mutters, "Oh, hell no," refusing to let the boss drag this out. He charges forward, declaring that they are absolutely not doing this resurrection loop again, before delivering a single, decisive slash that cuts straight through the Lich's body. A massive explosion of purple light erupts, splitting the clock tower completely in half. Crackling blue energy slowly dissipates from his hand as the dust begins to settle, and he stands calmly under the full moon, watching the ruins of the tower crumble. This giant clock tower collapses completely, signaling the absolute end of the battle. Derek walks over to the Lich's remains, noticing a glowing lantern-like object on the ground which glows with an intense golden light as he prepares to crush it. He stomps his foot down, crushing the Lich's phylactery into tiny glowing pieces, mocking the boss by stating that hiding your phylactery is basic Liching 101. Remembering his level 50 class upgrade, he decides to deal with it later, before calling out to his party, telling them they can finally come out now. This heavy stone doors creak open, and the group steps out into the ruined graveyard, where Brandy gasps in excitement, holding up a tiny vampire bat for crafting materials. Derek flashes a peace sign, noting that part 1 of his plan is officially complete, as the system announces the dungeon is cleared, doubling the rewards for the first clear. Reina gasps in absolute shock as 2 legendary storage rings float into her hands, leaving the entire party completely stunned as they stare at their incredible loot in disbelief. Derek holds up the legendary ring, casually asking Reina if it is actually any good, and she stares through it in absolute disbelief, claiming she has never heard of such rewards as a massive beam of light shoots into the sky to mark their incredible achievement. Still, she worries whether this insane loot will bring prosperity or absolute ruin to their village, though Derek silently compares it to his own storage bracelet, which is easily twice as big. Thomas is practically bouncing with excitement, realizing he can now carry an endless supply of materials, while Brandy immediately drags him off to start harvesting every single monster corpse in sight. Reina remains anxious about the potential chaos, but Derek reassures her that they are strong enough now, prompting her to take a quiet moment to realize just how much things have changed, and she silently thanks him for everything, while our boy just chuckles with his usual confidence. He secretly wonders how they would react if they saw the ridiculous hoard inside his bracelet, just as the kids run back completely exhausted, begging Brandy to craft them something cool. Gathering the group together, Derek announces it is time to execute step 2 of his plan, which requires one of them to hand over their newly acquired storage ring for a moment, but before he can even finish explaining, the girls instantly offer theirs without any hesitation. He happily accepts Reina's ring, leaving poor Thomas looking incredibly disappointed that his was rejected, and with a surge of red energy, Derek channels his power to stabilize the entire area, triggering a system notification that officially lowers the dungeon's extreme overflow status back to normal. Thomas looks around the gloomy woods, confused as to why everything still looks so dead, but Reina explains that while the source is gone, the forest still needs time to heal. Derek ruffles the kid's hair, telling him to have some patience before they get to work, as a mischievous grin spreads across his face, signaling it is time for their real mission. and his hand begins to glow with a bright blue magic to prepare the stage. Thomas looks completely repulsed by the plan, while Raina quickly covers Brandy's eyes to shield her, as Derek props up Wallace's lifeless body, determined to make the deceased knight look heroic. He aggressively adjusts the corpse's posture, telling the dead man to sit up straight before coating his own hand in sizzling green acid to add some authentic battle damage, melting the golden armor to make it look like a ghoul delivered the fatal blow, and he scatters empty potion bottles around to suggest a desperate struggle for survival. To finish the masterpiece, he places a storage ring in Wallace's hand as a final reward. Standing back with his hands on his hips, Derek proudly asks how the scene looks, leaving Raina to admit it is terrifyingly convincing, making a mental note never to cross him. This staged corpse sits perfectly against the tree, looking exactly like a fallen hero of legend, with the green acid still sizzling on his face to ensure no one questions the story, and Brandy clings to Raina in pure cringe, while Derek casually tells them to relax. Several days pass by, and the golden sunset paints a peaceful picture over the quiet village. This party finally returns home, and Thomas immediately runs off to brag to his grandparents, leaving the exhausted girls to collapse onto the grass while Derek wonders where he gets his energy. Raina is just relieved the village is safe, noting that Leon did a great job cleaning up, which prompts Derek to head off to find him, leaving the girls to rest in peace. Brandy suddenly grabs Raina's arm, excitedly reminding her that she finally reached level 10, dragging her along in a hurry to see what kind of class options she unlocked, which makes Derek smile. Remembering this was the exact reason he brought her along. And he thinks about all the intense experiences and rare materials she has gathered, from dangerous beasts to powerful monster parts, all before even reaching her first milestone. He can only wonder what kind of overpowered class the system is going to offer her, as they sit outside their home while Brandy carefully reviews her glowing blue status screen. Raina notes that she is taking her time, which Derek agrees is a very good sign, and he decides to open his own system menu to check his dungeon rewards, only to be greeted by a massive notification announcing his class has upgraded to Legendary. He receives a massive stat boost and 2 brand new skills, leaving him absolutely thrilled, starting with Absolute Nullify, a skill that absorbs any magic and sends it to the void, and Void Storage, which he finds slightly redundant but accepts because extra space never hurts. With those learned, he turns his attention to allocating his massive pool of stat points, pushing his intelligence and wisdom to 500 and unlocking the Magical Glass Cannon achievement, which awards him 2 extra magic skills, prompting him to immediately select Chain Lightning. He visualizes the devastating lightning strike, imagining himself obliterating entire armies with a single cast, while also learning physical resistance, which allows him to shrug off physical attacks like nothing. Derek lets out a satisfied sigh, incredibly pleased with how overpowered he has become, and he leans back on the bench, confident that everything is going to be fine. His relaxation is cut short when Brandy approaches him, asking for some serious advice, explaining that she has narrowed her choices down to 2 very different class options. She looks incredibly conflicted, admitting that one sounds amazing while the other is just odd. And she reveals the first option is Talon's Protege, an epic rarity leatherworking class. Raina drops her plate in absolute shock, stunned that she managed to unlock an epic class, and she immediately hugs her sister, expressing how incredibly proud she is of her. However, Brandy points out a major catch, as the class prevents her from ever surpassing her master, meaning she would forever remain in the shadow of the class's original owner. Raina argues that it doesn't matter, since an epic class is still an unbelievable achievement, but Derek silently agrees with the catch, realizing the system is rewarding her with limits. When Raina asks about the second option, Brandy reveals it is called All Smith, a rare growth-type class that apparently allows her to master every single crafting profession. But the description is incredibly vague, leaving her completely unsure of what to choose. Derek and Raina offer generic encouragement, telling her to simply follow her heart, which only earns them a glare as she complains that they are absolutely no help, and she closes her eyes to make the final decision on her own. This 2 of them watch her silently, waiting to see which path she decides to take, but as soon as she clicks the screen, a sudden surge of energy erupts, and she instantly faints, sending Raina into a complete panic as she screams her name. Fortunately, Brandy slowly groans and opens her eyes, rubbing her head in confusion. They quickly kneel beside her, asking if she is okay and how she feels, and she smiles weakly, reassuring them that she successfully obtained her new skills. Derek asks how many skills she got, guessing it might be 3 or 4, but she proudly reveals she got 42, leaving him completely speechless. Meanwhile, an old farmer leads his massive bull down a dusty path near the village, looking quite nervous as he passes by a heavily armored knight on patrol, who simply nods in greeting as he prepares to investigate the nearby forest. And the knight mutters Wallace's name, wondering what kind of trouble he caused this time. He walks off toward the sunset, determined to find out what happened to his subordinate. Back at the house, Brandy repeats that she successfully obtained all of her skills, prompting Derek to ask once again how many she actually managed to get, and she proudly repeats that she has 42, leaving them both utterly stunned. An hour later, Derek sits at the local tavern, realizing his hunch was absolutely correct, and he contemplates how her high-level dungeon experience gave her an insane crafting boost. Imagining her forging legendary enchanted armor, weapons, and powerful magical runes, as well as brewing incredible potions and cooking food with massive stat buffs, which makes him shudder at how absolutely terrifying her potential truly is. However, he realizes the best part is that she can finally brew decent deep beer as he takes a massive gulp of his drink to wash down the thought, before slamming his mug down and complaining to the bartender about how awful it tastes. Thomas bursts through the wooden tavern doors, frantically calling out for Derek, who is currently sitting at the bar while the bartender cleans up, gasping for breath as he tries to explain the sudden arrival of a powerful stranger, prompting the bartender to tell the exhausted kid to spit it out already. As Thomas explains that a heavily armed adventurer from Torith has just arrived, explaining that he is currently speaking with Reyna and his grandfather near the village entrance. Derek's expression instantly turns serious as he processes this highly unexpected news, stepping outside to see the formidable knight walking through the quiet streets, while the local villagers watch the armored warrior with a mix of curiosity and fear. Attempting to size up the newcomer, Derek tries to use his Identify skill on him, only to find that it completely fails because the knight's level is far too high, prompting him to quietly tell Thomas to head back inside where it is safe. Our boy steps forward to confront the stranger, ready for whatever might happen next, a confident smirk playing on his lips as he prepares for a classic standoff. He casually mocks the massive sword on the knight's back, asking what he is compensating for, but the serious warrior merely glares back, asking if he wants to find out. Realizing his modern joke went completely over the man's head, Derek silently sighs in disappointment, as the knight introduces himself as Bronson, a loyal servant of the Gracefall family. Hearing that familiar name makes Derek groan, instantly annoyed by another connection to those troublesome nobles, while Bronson explains that he knows about the tension between Derek and young Wallace. Derek feigns absolute shock, asking if the arrogant young noble has actually gone missing, which Bronson finds highly suspicious, assuming Wallace must have successfully cleared the nearby dungeon. He notes that the spreading disease has lessened significantly over the past few days, boasting that he would have cleared the level 100 dungeon himself if he had the chance. Playing along, Derek pretends to be impressed that the bratty noble actually pulled it off, prompting Bronson to demand that Derek lead him directly to the dungeon's entrance. Our boy agrees to guide him, but only if Bronson promises to do him a favor, which immediately makes the cautious knight suspicious of what the clever villager wants. Derek explains that he plans to visit Torith soon and wants a personal tour guide, leading the way into the deep woods where the dungeon's entrance lies hidden. Upon arriving, Bronson spots the staged body of Wallace and curses under his breath, kneeling beside the corpse to examine the carefully crafted signs of a desperate struggle, completely fooled by the fake battle damage Derek so meticulously prepared earlier. Using his magic, the knight lifts the body to prepare it for the journey back, noting that Master Gracefall will want to know about this tragic end and the storage rings. Derek casually walks behind him, asking if all the family's nobles are as arrogant as Wallace, which prompts Bronson to admit that the boy was indeed far too conceited for his own good. He reveals the master always feared Wallace's reckless actions would eventually get him killed, leaving Derek to hide a guilty smirk while silently agreeing with the knight's assessment. Bronson solemnly prays that the young noble's sacrifice will inspire them to be better men, but their quiet moment is suddenly shattered by a massive explosion of purple energy nearby. This sheer force of the blast knocks the seasoned knight backward in complete surprise, drawing his sword as he warns Derek to prepare for a dangerous, magical beast, only to freeze in absolute bewilderment at the ridiculous scene unfolding right before his eyes. Derek is casually sitting on the grass, offering a rare contract scroll to a tiny horned rabbit, prompting Bronson to scream in disbelief that he is wasting such a valuable item on a bunny. Unbothered by the shouting, Derek simply states that he likes the cute little creature, as a system notification confirms the successful contract with the level 64 horned rabbit. This system asks if he wants to initiate a powerful stat-sharing bond with his new pet, which Derek happily accepts, since boosting the rabbit's power was his plan all along. He jokingly asks the glowing bunny if she is some kind of tiny vampire before biting his own finger to draw the blood required to finalize the magical bond. Bronson watches in horror as the rabbit eagerly bites down on Derek's bleeding finger, triggering a massive swirl of purple energy that seals their souls together in an instant. This knight warns him that binding his soul to such a weak creature could permanently cripple him, but Derek merely shrugs off the warning, completely confident in his legendary class's abilities. To prove her new strength, the tiny rabbit stomps her foot, unleashing a devastating shockwave, before sending a telepathic message directly into Derek's mind, demanding to be fed. Startled by the sudden voice, Derek realizes he can actually hear the rabbit's thoughts, as she bloodthirstily asks if they can kill and eat the nearby human. She muses that human meat might be tough but chewy, while Derek just laughs in delight. Night quickly falls over the forest, leaving Bronson sitting by the campfire in absolute shock, watching the tiny horned rabbit hop around as she roasts a massive beast on a spit. He scratches his head in complete disbelief, unable to comprehend what he is witnessing, while Derek casually sits beside him, completely amused by the knight's stunned reaction. Bronson points a trembling finger at the campfire, stammering that the rabbit is literally cooking, prompting Derek to explain that he spent 2 valuable skill points to teach her the skill. Dumbfounded, the knight asks why on earth anyone would waste precious points on a pet, before quickly stopping himself, realizing it is completely useless to try and understand Derek's logic. Changing the subject, Derek asks if he can have one of the storage rings from Wallace's body, explaining that he wants to give it to his new companion as a reward. While the rabbit proudly drags a heavily burnt piece of meat over to them, Bronson sweat drops, secretly wishing he had such a bizarrely talented beast of his own. This next morning, the group finally makes their way back into the peaceful village, with Derek telling the knight to head to the tavern while he visits some friends. Sylvie telepathically asks how many humans they are allowed to kill, earning a quick scolding as Derek firmly explains that these are good people and she is not to hurt anyone. Disappointed by the strict rules, the grumpy bunny stomps her foot but ultimately agrees to behave. Nearby, Brandy is busy crafting at her table while Thomas practices his spear techniques before the excited boy spots Derek approaching and loudly calls out to his sister. Derek greets them warmly, happily announcing that he has brought a brand new friend along, introducing Sylvie to the kids, who immediately find the adorable horned rabbit absolutely precious. Sylvie smugly basks in the attention, silently agreeing that she is indeed both awesome and cute. Our boy explains that he wanted to introduce them because he is leaving on a long journey, which immediately brings tears to Brandy's eyes as she asks if he will ever return. Gently wiping her tears, Derek reassures her that he could never abandon his favorite master crafter, before seriously warning her to keep her incredible new class and skills a complete secret. She tearfully nods in agreement, promising to be smart and protect her valuable abilities, while Derek's eyes flash with a cold, murderous intent as he vows to destroy anyone who threatens her. He then turns to Thomas, telling him to pack his bags for their departure tomorrow morning. Looking out over the peaceful village, Derek knows it will be a long time before they return. Later that evening, Derek and Bronson sit inside the local tavern, enjoying a simple meal, though Derek quickly teases the knight about his picky eating habits when he hesitates, prompting Bronson to clarify that he is actually the guard captain and the master's personal butler. Meanwhile, Sylvie sniffs the tavern food, telepathically complaining that it does not smell very appetizing, taking a small bite before crying out in horror and asking if they can cook it better. Derek chuckles softly, gently informing the distressed rabbit that the food is already fully cooked, which sends a visible shiver of pure terror down the poor bunny's spine. This bartender sheepishly apologizes for the quality, admitting he is far from a professional chef, but Derek raises his mug high, laughing that the terrible food and dungeon rewards will still draw crowds. Back at the tavern, Derek casually drops the news about the dungeon storage ring rewards, shrugging off Bronson's confusion by explaining he wants to give the local villagers a head start, but the knight's bewilderment is cut short when a sudden wave of pressure fills the room, as Derek unleashes a terrifying aura to remind the knight to keep his people safe, before casually sipping his drink and leaving the seasoned warrior sweating in absolute silence. This next morning, the warm sun begins to rise over the quiet, peaceful village, painting the streets in golden light as the group prepares for their long journey ahead, while the locals gather around to bid a fond farewell to their favorite adventurers, prompting Thomas's grandmother to fuss over his hygiene and pack extra pairs of underwear, which leads to a warm, embarrassing family hug that makes the young boy blush. Tearfully sniffling, Thomas admits he is going to miss his grandparents terribly on the road, while Leon shakes Derek's hand, wishing him the absolute best on his upcoming travels, before Brandy runs up with a beautifully wrapped gift she prepared for them both, proudly presenting a tiny, custom-made purple cloak to keep Sylvie warm and protected, which the smug little horned rabbit immediately puts on, feeling incredibly elegant and comfy, as Brandy excitedly hands Derek a fresh batch of the modern black shirts he loves, leaving our boy absolutely thrilled with the perfect, high-quality gifts from his favorite crafter. To top it all off, the kid's mother brings over a massive basket of fresh food, packed to the brim with delicious bread, cheese, sausages, and fresh red apples, which instantly catches the eye of a very hungry, glowing-eyed horned rabbit. Before anyone can react, Sylvie launches herself forward like a tiny purple rocket, crashing straight into the basket of food while Derek desperately tries to stop her. But the greedy bunny is already aggressively stuffing a giant baguette into her mouth, leaving her bloated, burping, and completely unbothered by Derek's annoyed scolding on the floor. Raina walks up with a warm smile, telling them not to be strangers out there, before pulling Derek into a tight, heartfelt embrace to thank him for saving their lives, teasingly suggesting that she and the others might just join his party next time, which Derek happily welcomes. Promising that they will always have a place by his side with their goodbyes finished, Derek and Thomas eagerly run through the gates toward the big city, where Bronson is already waiting to guide them on the next leg of their journey. This group sets off down the road, with Thomas looking around in absolute wonder as the massive, breathtaking castle city of Tarinth finally looms over the horizon before them. Walking through the bustling lower streets, they are greeted by the smell of street food, which immediately makes Sylvie drool as she telepathically demands some delicious meat on a stick, prompting Derek to chuckle and buy her exactly what her greedy little heart desires. As they munch on their snacks, Bronson warns them to watch what they eat down here, leading Derek to ask why the local commoners seem so incredibly wary of the knight, which makes Bronson sigh, explaining that most nobles avoid the lower city entirely, since the few who do venture down here are usually incredibly cruel and spoiled. A harsh reality that Derek silently agrees with as he finishes his simple snack. Bronson guides them toward the middle-class gates, warning Derek not to cause any scenes, as the local guards respectfully greet the high-ranking knight and let them pass through, revealing a much cleaner, busier district that looks a bit more like the villages. Though Derek can't help but notice how deeply divided this world's social classes are, realizing they wouldn't even be allowed in here if not for Bronson's noble status. Meanwhile, Sylvie casually sits on Thomas's head while happily gnawing on her meat skewers, giving Derek a brilliant idea on how to fully exploit their guide's high standing, as he calls out to Bronson with a mischievous, confident grin on his face, suggesting they grab lunch at a highly exclusive restaurant he has been wanting to try, leading them straight to the Crown Restaurant, located in the heart of the noble district. Inside, a wealthy, red-haired woman is currently enjoying an incredibly expensive steak meal, highly praising the chef's work and sending the relieved cook-off with flying colors. But their quiet dining experience is suddenly shattered when the front doors bang open, as the restaurant's guards block Derek, demanding he leave before he gets hurt, while Bronson desperately tries to hold him back from causing a massive diplomatic incident. Hearing the commotion, the elegant red-haired woman looks down from the balcony to investigate, as the guards quickly explain that a commoner is causing trouble and needs ejecting. But she ignores them, recognizing Bronson and asking if Master Gracefall is doing well. Bronson bows respectfully, though Derek internally cringes at the mention of the dead psychopath. Before the mysterious woman turns her sharp gaze directly onto our confident young protagonist, Derek easily slips past the guards, introducing himself and offering her a highly lucrative deal, which instantly intrigues the woman, who smiles as she recognizes his name from reports, inviting him up to her private office, eager to finally speak with him before calling out to her head waiter Benito to handle the rest of the party, instructing him to treat Bronson and Thomas to a lavish meal on the house. Once inside the office, Derek wastes no time, summoning a massive surge of magical energy, which leaves the woman completely speechless as he drops a giant beast onto the floor. This massive, glowing corpse of the void beast thudding heavily against the wooden floorboards, she stares in absolute awe, unable to believe her eyes at such an incredible specimen, drawing a glowing green dagger to ask if she may personally examine the carcass. Slicing into the flesh, she declares it immaculate and asks how he obtained it, though Derek keeps his trade secrets close, asking what kind of price she can offer, prompting her to explain that she must contact her superiors for such a high-quality item, while Derek agrees to wait, noting that he wants to keep the beast's hide, secretly imagining Thomas wearing a ridiculous bulky set of purple void beast armor, as the woman suggests storing the carcass in their specialized preservation chambers for now, which Derek happily accepts since it frees up a massive amount of storage space. With their interim deal officially sealed, they shake hands on a highly profitable partnership, but as Derek heads for the door, he stops to ask one final question, prompting the curious woman to turn back and see what else he wants, as our boy flashes a smug grin, asking if she has ever heard of coffee. Meanwhile, the other wealthy nobles in the dining room watch in absolute horror, whispering to each other in disbelief at the sheer amount of food being consumed, as Thomas, Bronson, and Sylvie lie completely defeated by a mountain of empty plates. Despite her bloated stomach, the greedy little rabbit is still aggressively shoveling down food, prompting the exhausted waiter to bring out yet another massive order of braised venison, which Sylvie happily accepts. Determined to learn the secrets of this delicious cooking, Derek finally returns to the table, laughing at the ridiculous pile of empty dishes, as he casually reveals that he just negotiated a massive deal with the crown, leaving Bronson completely choked up with shock as Derek tells them to follow him. Walking out of the restaurant, Derek confidently states that it is time to meet the boss, as the scene shifts to the massive, luxurious estate of the Gracefall family at sunset. Inside the grand study, Master Gracefall sits quietly at his desk as Bronson enters, with the loyal knight placing a hand over his chest to announce his return. Prompting the stern noble to look up and demand a full, detailed report, Bronson solemnly confirms that young Master Wallace has indeed passed away in the dungeon, which makes the grieving father sigh deeply, admitting that he always feared this outcome, looking up with a cold, piercing gaze to ask if there was any foul play, as the sunset casts long, dramatic shadows across the quiet walls of the estate, while Bronson prepares to deliver the rest of his carefully prepared, fabricated report. Back in the study, Walter demands that his loyal knight spit out the truth immediately, prompting Bronson to admit that Wallace's supposed heroic death doesn't sound like him at all, which makes the grieving father narrow his eyes and ask what he is implying, as Bronson nervously explains that Wallace must have offended someone incredibly powerful in that dungeon, confirming his dark suspicion that the young master was actually murdered by a dangerous guest, who is currently staying right under their noses in the family's own guest house. Meanwhile, Derek is having the absolute time of his life, singing pop songs in the bath, as two exhausted water mages blast him with high-pressure magic while he belts out lyrics, leaving the spellcasters completely bewildered that their strongest offensive magic isn't even scratching him, while our boy happily continues his dramatic performance without a single care in the world. He casually asks them to turn up the water pressure to make it feel like a proper massage, prompting the terrified mages to realize exactly why their captain warned them not to make him mad. Before Derek finally wraps himself in a towel and strolls down the hallway still singing, stopping in his tracks when he spots Thomas waiting for him with a clean set of clothes, only to find out that the young boy and Sylvie have also taken a nice relaxing bath, which makes Derek smirk as he notices the tiny horned rabbit looking incredibly clean and fluffy, while Thomas proudly explains that he managed to convince the stubborn bunny to join him, leaving Sylvie feeling absolutely adorable and ready to eat another massive mountain of food, a flawless logic that Derek simply cannot argue with as he chuckles to himself, before Thomas mentions that Master Gracefall has formally invited him to a private dinner tonight. With their baths finished, the group heads back to their rooms to prepare for the meeting, as night falls over the massive estate and Bronson knocks on Derek's door to fetch him, only to look completely dumbfounded when the door swings open to reveal our casual protagonist, who flatly refuses to wear the fancy noble clothes, opting for his favorite simple black t-shirt, teasingly suggesting they could always go back to the Crown restaurant if his style is an issue, which Thomas and Sylvie eagerly support since they are both still craving that delicious food. Meanwhile, back at the Crown, the elegant red-haired Stella sits alone in her quiet office, nervously preparing to make a direct report to her incredibly powerful and intimidating boss, taking a deep breath to steel her nerves before activating her glowing communication crystal, gulping anxiously as the magical device begins to hum with intense energy in her hand. She respectfully greets her lady, announcing that she has some highly important business to discuss, only to be greeted by a warm, affectionate voice praising her beauty from the capital, which makes Stella blush and humbly insist that she is nowhere near as radiant as her master, prompting the playful boss to laugh and tease her about being far too modest, though Stella internally notes how incredibly powerful her master's charm magic is even through a crystal, before quickly steering the conversation back to the highly lucrative contract she wants to establish, which makes the boss sigh dramatically, wishing they could just chat instead of talking business. But she instantly approves the Void Beast deal upon hearing Derek Hunt's name, leading Stella to explain the second, highly unusual contract, involving a mysterious new beverage, describing the incredible, energizing effects of the rich, chocolatey coffee beans she tasted. She explains that Derek will receive 3% of all profits if they successfully replicate it, a deal that her boss realizes will easily net him tens of thousands of gold monthly, praising Stella's sharp business instincts and advising her to treat the young man exceptionally well, though Stella warns that Derek is bound to stir up massive trouble in the city very soon, likely clashing with the notoriously arrogant city lord Malcolm Torreth because Derek is too decent, prompting her boss to scoff at the troublesome city lord and tell Stella to trust her gut, granting her full permission to assist Derek in any way possible if he ever asks. While back at the estate, Bronson guides Derek toward the grand double-doored dining hall, explaining that Thomas and Sylvie will eat elsewhere since the master wishes to speak privately, leaving Derek to steal his expression as he prepares to face the grieving noble alone. He steps into the luxurious room, following Bronson past the rows of elegant furniture, as the massive dining table stretches out before him under the warm glow of the chandelier, where Walter Gracefall sits quietly at the head, casually dismissing the night with a wave, before gesturing toward the empty seat and inviting Derek to sit down and join him, prompting our boy to calmly take his place at the table without showing any fear, as the two powerful men lock eyes in a tense, silent battle of wills across the room, until Walter finally breaks the silence, coldly asking if Derek is the one who killed his son, a direct accusation that hangs heavily in the quiet air of the grand dining hall, only for Derek to suddenly burst into a loud, mocking laugh that echoes off the walls, leaving the stern noble staring him in absolute silence, completely unfazed by the outburst. Derek chuckles, teasingly suggesting that Bronson deserves a medal for his incredibly convincing acting, which prompts Walter to lean forward, demanding to know if he is denying the deed. But Derek's playful smirk instantly vanishes as he leans in with a cold, serious expression, bluntly admitting that he did indeed kill the spoiled young master without a shred of regret, causing Walter to sigh deeply, calmly asking what his son could have possibly done to offend him, which makes Derek scoff, stating that Wallace could have offended him all he wanted without dying. But there was one unforgivable line that the cruel noble crossed that could never be undone, recalling how Wallace brutally beat an innocent young girl and her mother half to death, before moving to execute his loyal friend just for standing up to protect the child, as Derek unleashes a terrifying dark aura that completely fills the room with suffocating pressure, warning that his house would have vanished from the city if he had arrived any later, though Walter remains calm, noting that destroying his family would be much harder than Derek thinks, prompting our boy to flash a smug grin before instantly vanishing from his seat in a blink, reappearing directly behind the noble's shoulder to whisper that he could easily manage it, leaving Walter sweating in shock as Derek casually teleports back to his seat across the table, cheerfully suggesting they enjoy their delicious meal together since none of that needs to happen, though Derek admits he is still curious why the father seems so calm about his loss, which prompts Walter to admit that he is indeed furious, but not at our protagonist, explaining that he is deeply angry at himself for being too soft on his son, allowing Wallace to turn into a monster, while his fabricated heroic death preserves the family's honor. He solemnly admits that, in a strange way, he is actually quite thankful to Derek, leaving our boy completely caught off guard by the noble's surprisingly logical and mature response. Before Walter cuts his steak, stating that there is still one mystery he cannot solve, pointing out that Derek is obviously too high level to have cleared that low-level dungeon, which makes Derek smile, offering to share the secret in exchange for a binding oath, prompting the curious noble to agree, provided the conditions are not too incredibly stringent, as Derek holds up two fingers, demanding he tell nobody and never use the knowledge maliciously, leading Walter to silently contemplate the terms for a brief moment in the quiet room, before declaring the conditions perfectly acceptable and preparing to swear to the great system, as a brilliant glowing light erupts around him to seal the sacred, unbreakable oath. A system notification instantly appears, confirming that Walter's binding oath is officially active until death, prompting Derek to casually take a bite of his food and ask what he knows about legendary classes, which Walter admits is very little, only knowing that such mythical powers actually exist, as our boy flashes a confident, smug grin and reveals that he possesses one himself, leaving the seasoned noble completely stunned as he eagerly asks to know more about it, which Derek happily agrees to explain, shrugging as he notes it depends on the questions, prompting Walter to ask if he knows the exact conditions required to obtain such a class, as Derek explains that one must go to absolute extremes before even choosing their path, visualizing a dedicated swordsman who must train, live, and sleep with his blade to become one, or a legendary water mage who must constantly immerse herself in the deep water to unlock her power. Derek explains that extreme dedication is the secret to unlocking a legendary class, prompting Walter to ask if he has tested this theory on anyone else, which makes our boy admit he is looking for a safe place for his disciple, leading the noble to wonder if he means the young boy currently struggling at the table. But Derek laughs it off, knowing Thomas lacks the patience for that kind of training, though Walter warns that this city is definitely the place to settle down, explaining that the local city lord, Malcolm Torrith, is 100 times worse than his son, a spoiled brat who slithered into power using his father's connections without earning a thing, warning that Malcolm will immediately try to seize anyone Derek wants to keep safe, which is why Walter suggests they head to Savannah instead to find a proper home. He describes Savannah as a wealthy merchant city set with strict laws and a caring leader, prompting Derek to make a mental note to check it out once his business is done, though Walter warns that the troublesome city lord will likely summon him very soon, leaving our casual protagonist to sigh as he quietly contemplates his next move, wondering if it would be more fun to ignore the invite or offend him face to face, which completely baffles Walter since both options end with him making a powerful enemy. But Derek just smirks, silently asking if the noble even knows who he is. With dinner finished, Derek heads back to the guest rooms to gather his companions, calling out to Thomas and Sylvie to see if they are ready to leave, cheerfully announcing that they need to get some rest before a big day tomorrow, only to hear Thomas grunting as he struggles to pull the heavy door open, leaving Derek staring in absolute disbelief at the hilarious sight dragging across the floor, as the exhausted boy drags a completely bloated, overstuffed bunny into the hallway, huffing and puffing as he proudly declares that they are ready to go, while Sylvie floats in a happy, flowery daze after eating her weight in food. Outside the gates, Bronson bids them farewell and offers to keep the guest house open, but Derek politely declines, wanting to find a boring local inn for the full experience, whispering that heated baths and free meals will spoil his companions in minutes, waving goodbye to the loyal knight as they finally set off into the city, with Thomas happily walking alongside him while the fluffy bunny hitches a ride. This group strolls through the beautiful, stone-paved streets of the bustling town together, taking in the sights as they pass by various shops and local citizens, prompting Thomas to ask if Walter is actually a decent guy unlike his late son, which Derek confirms, leading the boy to nervously ask if the father knows the truth, only for Derek to casually whisper that the smart noble already knows everything, leaving Thomas completely frozen in absolute terror as his brain instantly short-circuits, though Derek quickly grabs his shoulder and tells him to finally calm down, explaining that Walter accepted his son's nature and knew he would get himself killed, reassuring the panicked kid that the grieving father is actually on their side now. They soon arrive at a cozy local inn and approach the front desk, where Derek drops a handful of shiny gold coins to request 2 rooms, but the clerk sighs and explains they only have 1 room left, which Derek accepts, handing over the key with a polite smile as he welcomes them to the inn, prompting our boy to swing the door open and lead the way inside, stepping into the simple room to find only a single bed waiting for them, which makes Derek turn around to deliver some tragic news to his young companion, teasingly telling Thomas that he's sleeping on the floor because rules are rules, before pulling out a pouch of gold and mentioning he has some errands to run, tossing the room key and some money so the kid can explore the city, stepping back out into the hallway while telling them to have some fun. He pauses at the door, turning back to give Sylvie one final instruction, prompting the adorable bunny to take her job of protecting her food source very seriously, leaving Derek to walk down the street alone, wondering if they'll be alright, before laughing at himself since Sylvie is strong enough to easily level the city, though he suddenly visualizes a terrifying nightmare of the bunny accidentally destroying everything, rubbing his temples as he prays that his chaotic companion doesn't cause a disaster, only to stop in his tracks when he spots a massive building ahead. Looking up at the giant skull-adorned entrance of the local adventurers guild in town, stepping inside to find a rowdy tavern filled with drinking and brawling warriors, where a massive thug is currently choking a man over a simple vocabulary misunderstanding. Two low-rank adventurers ignore the chaos while discussing their next silver-ranked quest together, as Derek casually walks past them toward the main counter of the guild, drawing amused whispers from the crowd about his incredibly casual and simple outfit. Though our boy completely ignores the ongoing brawl and keeps moving forward anyway, brushing past a scarred warrior who glares at him and tells him to keep walking until he reaches the counter where the receptionist politely asks for his membership, prompting Derek to casually ask to register as a platinum-ranked adventurer right away, which instantly causes the entire tavern to burst into hysterical, mocking laughter at him. Though a gold-ranked adventurer quickly steps in to handle the situation himself now, explaining that platinum badges can only be issued directly in the capital city. Derek scratches his chin and casually decides to just take a gold badge instead, which only makes the rowdy crowd laugh harder at his absolute sheer delusion, prompting the gold-ranked examiner to get serious and explain badges must be earned. But Derek just shrugs, completely unfazed by the prospect of a tough test, leaving the examiner to sigh and tell him to follow him to his funeral, leading our protagonist into a massive indoor training arena for high-ranked adventurers now, where powerful warriors are sparring with healers standing by in case of emergencies, before the examiner calls out to a massive, muscular fighter named Russell nearby, who finishes pummeling his current opponent and sends him crashing to the floor, introducing Derek as a new challenger who is here for a gold-ranked exam. Russell looks at the newcomer with a smug grin, completely unimpressed by his build, as the examiner explains that Derek actually wanted platinum but is settling for gold, prompting the giant to laugh heartily and invite the pipsqueak into the ring, though the examiner stops Derek first to hand him a standard guild document, which is a massive liability waiver stating the guild isn't responsible for his death, but Derek signs it without hesitation and steps forward to get this over with, as Russell cracks his neck and generously offers him 2 free shots to start, prompting our boy to tell him to shut up and fight because he's busy, leaving the examiner to facepalm, already anticipating the absolute disaster about to happen, as the furious giant roars and charges forward with a devastating, powerful punch. Russell's massive fist flies right toward Derek, who stands completely still without moving, only for our boy to deliver a casual slap that sends the giant flying, leaving the examiner, healers, and spectators frozen in absolute, jaw-dropping shock at the sight, as the massive warrior crashes heavily into the stone floor, completely knocked out, prompting Derek to casually hold out his hand and ask for his badge. Though back in the office, the examiner nervously sweats as Derek casually yawns, explaining that he still cannot officially issue the gold badge just yet, as he tremblingly reaches for a heavy binder on his bookshelf nearby, opening the book to explain that Derek must first complete a silver-ranked mission, presenting the active quests around Torith and inviting him to choose whichever he likes. Looking through the quest book, Derek tells the talkative examiner to just be quiet, pointing directly at a specific mission that instantly catches his attention, even though the examiner warns him that hunting toadcaps requires a week of travel. But our boy just smiles and confidently accepts the quest anyway, walking out of the room while the other adventurers whisper about his insane strength, leaving the examiner to sweat as he confirms the newcomer easily passed the test. Strolling back down the street, Derek decides to check in on his companions, calling out to Sylvie through their mental link to see what she is doing, which prompts the cute bunny to pop up and answer his call immediately. She happily reveals she is currently stuffing her face at a local pastry shop. Derek chuckles and asks if she can keep an eye on Thomas while he is gone, prompting Sylvie to imagine riding the poor boy like a horse to protect her food source, though Derek warns her to leave some food for the kid instead of eating everything, leaving the fluffy bunny to reluctantly agree to share the delicious snacks. With his business settled, Derek unleashes his incredible speed and sprints out of the city, creating a trail of lightning behind. As he dashes toward the distant mountain range, he laughs to himself, noting that a week's journey only took him a single hour, before scanning the quiet forest to find the target of his quest. Suddenly, a tiny mushroom creature peeks out from behind some nearby bushes, prompting Derek to smile at how adorable the little toadcap looks in person. He immediately snatches it up and tosses it into his dimensional inventory, quickly gathering the remaining 14 mushrooms to easily finish the quest. Now that his official work is done, he walks to an open clearing, standing on a cliffside where no one can interrupt his real plans today. With a smirk, Derek activates his skill and casts Void Call with glowing eyes, shooting a massive beam of purple energy straight into the dark sky. This clouds part as a giant rift tears open in the atmosphere above, letting a massive claw crash down onto the shattered earth below, leaving our protagonist excited to see what kind of beast he summoned. A purple demon descends from the portal, roaring with dark energy as it lands. This creature crashes heavily into the ground, kicking up dust and debris everywhere, standing tall as it tries to look as intimidating as possible to its summoner. Derek just stares at it, rubbing his chin in complete and utter disappointment, openly complaining about how tiny and weak the summoned beast actually is. Furious at the insult, the demon roars and charges forward to attack him, only for Derek to casually slap it down with a single effortless strike, lifting the defeated creature while wondering how much money it will fetch him. He decides to farm a few more since they seem pretty valuable to sell, hoping that the next summon will actually push him to his limits. With that in mind, he casts Void Call once again to try his luck. Another massive beam of purple light pierces through the dark clouds above, cracking the sky open with even greater force than the first time. Derek grins as he notices way more cracks forming in the rift as a giant claw tears through the barrier of space and time, shattering the portal to unleash a much larger and more powerful demon beast. This massive creature lands with a devastating shockwave that shakes the mountains, towering over the landscape as it looks down at the tiny human. It glares with multiple glowing red eyes, radiating pure malice and power, prompting Derek to draw his glowing water blades with an excited smile. Our giant beast slowly turns its head to face its insolent summoner. Derek blinks in surprise as the beast reacts to its new surroundings, watching it step forward toward the smaller defeated demon on the ground. This giant gently picks up the fallen creature, cradling it in its hands, before looking back at Derek with a mixture of intense grief and rage. It speaks with a booming voice, demanding to know what he did. Roaring in fury as lightning strikes the stormy sky behind it, pointing out that Derek has the power of the void but lacks control, leaving our protagonist completely speechless at the talking monster in front of him. He rubs his neck and apologizes, admitting he was just caught off guard, but the beast hisses, repeating that he does not use the void well. Derek conjures a small void sphere, claiming he does a pretty decent job, which only makes the giant beast scream in absolute furious rage, warning him that he has no idea what dangerous powers he is playing with. It looks down at the dead demon, declaring it will rectify this mistake, prompting Derek to grin and ask if this is where the training arc begins. He hilariously visualizes the monster teaching him how to wax a car together, mockingly bowing and asking the great master of the void for guidance. This beast glares at him, completely offended by his casual and disrespectful attitude, flatly refusing his request before promising to end his life right here. It leaps forward with incredible speed, launching a devastating attack at him. A massive blast of purple energy erupts toward our protagonist in an instant, as the beast swings its glowing fist with terrifying and destructive power. This ground shatters as the giant slams its fist down with immense force, grinning as it prepares to tear the annoying human to shreds. It mocks the conceited human only to notice multiple void portals opening around it, leaving the beast completely stunned by the sudden and unexpected turn of events. Derek stands calmly on a rock, admitting that fighting works just as well, prompting the monster to realize he is definitely not an amateur void user. Our boy shrugs, explaining he spent a lot of time inside the void. Furious, the beast roars and unleashes a barrage of deadly energy beams. Derek narrowly dodges a beam that slices right past his face in midair, running through the chaotic battlefield as explosions go off all around him. He maneuvers through the storm of lasers, keeping his focus entirely on the fight, but the beast manages to land a heavy blow that sends him flying, raising both fists to crush him into the ground once and for all. A massive explosion rocks the area as the giant slams its fists down, leaving Derek lying in the crater, coughing up a bit of blood from the impact. This beast immediately charges up another blast to finish him off for good, prompting Derek to focus his energy as the attack flies toward him, getting engulfed in a massive flash of purple light as the attack lands. This giant slams its fist down again to ensure its absolute victory. But Derek stands back up, wiping the blood from his face with a grin, smiling as he wonders if this is how others feel when fighting him. This beast stares in disbelief, shocked that he laughs at his own death. But Derek chuckles, clarifying that he isn't laughing at his own demise. His eyes glow purple as he menacingly says he is laughing at theirs, leaping into the air to dodge another massive strike from the monster. He conjures sharp water claws on his fingers with a swift, fluid motion, slicing upward to cut through the beast's defenses with absolute ease, preparing to deliver the final, devastating blow to end the fight for good. Opening massive void portals above the giant beast, Derek fires down beams of energy to pin it, charging up his own power as he prepares to deliver the final blow to his opponent, unleashing a massive blast of purple energy directly at the struggling monster in front of him, which collides with a devastating explosion that completely shatters the surrounding landscape, slamming the giant beast into the ground and leaving it utterly defeated in the crater. Walking over to his fallen opponent, Derek watches as the creature slowly struggles to move, prompting the beast to weakly ask him to just end its life and be done with it. Derek asks if they can talk first, surprised to find that void beasts are actually intelligent, but the creature warns him that he is an enemy who still lacks control over his power, leaving our protagonist completely confused about what kind of control the monster is talking about. This beast refuses to explain further, simply telling him once again to just finish the job. Derek agrees, drawing his water blades since letting it go would only invite future trouble, bidding the creature farewell before driving his blade down to end the battle once and for all. With the fight over, he sighs and decides it is time to head back to the city, walking through the quiet forest while using his mental link to check on his companions, only to find Sylvie riding on Tommy's head while calling him a complete idiot. Watching the naive boy walk alongside a suspicious girl who seems to have hidden motives, Derek warns the bunny to make sure the girl does not steal their valuable storage ring, telling her to handle the situation carefully without actually hurting the girl in the process. Night falls as our protagonist finally arrives back at the massive dragon-shaped adventurers guild. This examiner looks up from his desk in surprise, asking if Derek forgot something already, only for Derek to casually toss the quest bag onto the table to prove he finished, leaving the examiner completely speechless at how quickly he completed a week-long journey. He hands over the reward of 2 gold coins, which leaves Derek feeling pretty underwhelmed, before presenting him with a sparkling gold badge to officially welcome him to the guild. Derek binds the badge to himself with his mana, finding the whole process rather cool. Meanwhile, the local tavern is quiet as the staff cleans up for the night, prompting Derek to head back to the inn to check on his companions before tomorrow's meeting. Sitting down for dinner, he asks Tommy about the new friend Sylvie mentioned earlier, which makes the boy blush as he happily explains her name is Alicia, and she is very nice. He mentions she showed him around and promised to help him get his bronze badge tomorrow, but Derek warns him to be careful since Sylvie thinks she might be a bit shady, leaving the naive boy defensive while Derek internally sighs at his complete lack of suspicion. Telling him to just stay alert, Derek heads off to bed while leaving Tommy with the bill. This next morning, birds chirp outside the grand building of the Crown as a new day begins. Derek walks into Stella's office, greeting her warmly and asking if he arrived too early, but she smiles and says he is right on time, inviting him to take a seat. She asks him to close his eyes for a moment, which he does with a curious smile. Sniffing the air as a very familiar and pleasant aroma begins to drift toward him. Stella presents him with a hot cup of coffee, explaining her botanist worked overnight on it. Taking a slow sip, Derek enjoys the rich smell and taste of the freshly brewed drink, admitting that while it is not bad, there is definitely room for improvement. He suggests brewing it with less water or double brewing it to get a stronger taste, explaining how roasting the beans longer creates a much bolder flavor depending on the roast, adding that people can customize it with milk, cream, or sugar to suit their palate. Stella is highly impressed by his knowledge, quickly writing down his suggestions for her chefs, though Derek chuckles and corrects her, explaining that they are actually called baristas. He explains that where he comes from, coffee makers have their own special title, prompting Stella to smile and suggest they finally get down to their official business. She slides a paper across the desk, revealing her employer has a premium offer. Derek immediately spits out his drink in shock upon seeing the massive price of 25,000 gold, asking if the number is correct while Stella assures him it is absolutely legitimate. Meanwhile, out on the city bridge, Tommy and Alicia are sitting together enjoying the morning, with Tommy thanking her for buying him breakfast and ice cream during their walk. She asks if she can call him Tommy, making the boy blush while Sylvie watches closely. Alicia gently touches his hand, sending the flustered boy into a state of pure panic, but she is actually sliding her fingers toward the gold storage ring on his finger, prompting Sylvie to glare in annoyance at the boy's complete and utter cluelessness. This bunny suddenly bites Tommy's head, making him scream in pain and jump up, as he angrily demands to know why she would do something so mean to him. Alicia asks if he is okay, while Sylvie just glares at her with a knowing look, keeping her eyes locked on the girl's hands to prevent any further theft attempts. Back in the office, Stella spits out her own coffee in complete and utter shock, staring in disbelief at the second, smaller void beast Derek just placed on her desk. He offers to throw it in for free as a gesture of goodwill for their partnership, prompting Stella to draw a glowing green knife to carefully inspect the delicate creature. She tastes a single drop of its blood, looking thoughtful as she analyzes the essence, only for her eyes to widen in absolute shock as she realizes its true nature, urgently telling Derek to put the creature back into his dimensional storage immediately. She explains she cannot accept it for free because he needs to know its real value, pointing out that consuming void beasts permanently increases stats, though usually requiring a full meal. Derek listens quietly, wondering what makes this particular small beast so incredibly special. Stella reveals her own vitality increased significantly from just tasting a single drop of blood, concluding that this rare baby void beast is actually worth an absolute fortune. Far away, white birds fly around a beautiful garden pavilion bathed in bright sunlight. A bird lands on a tray near a glowing communication crystal as a woman sips tea, enjoying her quiet morning while holding her elegant teacup with dark painted nails. She notices the crystal glowing, realizing that Stella is calling her once again, putting down her cup as she prepares to answer the incoming magical transmission. This crystal shines brightly as she hopes this call is actually about important business. She answers the call, instructing Stella to put the mysterious newcomer on the line. Stella hands the glowing orb to Derek, warning him that her voice carries a powerful compulsion, but Derek just smiles and thanks her, confident that he can handle the mental strain. He holds the glowing crystal to his ear and calmly greets the voice on the other side. This woman introduces herself and immediately commands him to hop on one foot to test him. Derek feels a sudden magical tug on his mind, causing him to lift his leg, but he quickly resists the command and puts his foot back down with a smirk, leaving the woman absolutely thrilled that he could resist her direct mental compulsion so easily. He asks what he can do for her, though she insists that business can wait, asking if he feels any strain or impulses to flatter her or reveal secrets. She is incredibly excited, realizing they might actually be able to meet in person soon. She introduces herself as Alana Swan, the owner and operator of every Crown restaurant, calling him a very interesting man, which Derek politely acknowledges with a confident smile. He then asks if she could tell Stella to stop hopping on one foot, prompting Alana to release her, leaving Stella to instantly stop with a serious expression. Stella collapses into her chair in complete exhaustion, letting out a tired sigh, while Derek asks if they can finally focus on the business they have today. Alana chuckles and agrees, noting that Stella has already informed her of the entire situation, offering him a massive sum of 50,000 gold for the smaller void beast. Derek smiles, walking around the desk as he reveals he has even more to show them. Derek drops the bombshell that he actually has a third void beast in his possession, leaving Stella completely knocked out on her chair while he continues his casual chat, explaining that this third creature was much larger and possessed the shocking ability to speak, which deeply intrigues Alana since they have only ever encountered one other speaking beast, prompting Derek to listen closely as he prepares to share what the monster told him, while Alana sips her tea and notes their previous specimen could only say basic words, gently patting her pet bird while deciding Stella can inspect this new beast very soon. Assuming the poor receptionist ever manages to wake up from her sudden shock, as Alana watches her bird fly off while expressing immense interest in this speaking creature, before shifting her focus to the business at hand to discuss their official contract. Derek admits that gold is not his main priority, requesting membership to the crown instead, but Alana immediately rejects this as a form of payment for a very simple reason, explaining she had already decided to grant him membership because she genuinely likes his style, leaving our protagonist pleasantly surprised and highly honored by her unexpected generosity, while Alana chuckles and tells him to drop the formalities and just call her Alana. To which Derek replies that building strong alliances is far more valuable than hoarding gold, prompting her to offer a special preparation method that maximizes his potential stat gains, alongside a generous 20% cut of the auction profits for each prepared meal, ensuring he gets incredibly rich while also gaining massive power from the beast's essence, which Derek happily accepts before mentioning he has a few more specific requests. He starts by asking for the beast's hide and claws to use for crafting, which Alana easily grants since her establishment has absolutely no use for those parts, before Derek points out Stella's high-grade knives and requests a weapon from the same smith, explaining that his current blade is starting to struggle to keep up with his power, though Alana warns the smith is eccentric and cuts his auction percentage to 18%, a minor setback that Derek gladly accepts so long as the weapon meets his standards, before adding a request for a storage ring packed with cooking equipment and recipes, making Alana wonder if he is planning on training his very own personal chef, which Derek confirms with a knowing smirk as he thinks of his fluffy companion, before moving on to his final and most unusual request of the day. He asks if his companion can shadow their elite kitchen staff to learn their secrets, prompting Alana to burst into laughter at such a bizarre but harmless request, readily agreeing to the terms while Stella finally begins to stir back to consciousness, as Alana expresses her excitement for their partnership to grow even stronger over time, before suddenly shifting the tone to ask a few highly serious questions of her own, revealing that she has eyes and ears absolutely everywhere in this city, meaning Derek does not have to worry about anyone else putting the pieces together, before directly asking how he gained the impossible ability to summon void beasts, sending a sudden jolt of pure shock and panic straight through Derek's mind, though she quickly reassures him that his secret is perfectly safe with her. She points out that bringing a beast to town and unleashing massive purple beams is noticeable, sipping her tea while reminding him to be much more careful in the future, hoping that she is the only one clever enough to connect all the dots, which prompts Derek to ask if she is actively spying on his every move, to which she replies that she does not watch him personally but has others, introducing her mysterious and highly loyal network of servants known as the Deathsworn, explaining they were vile criminals who deserved a fate far worse than simple death, whom she has trapped inside their own minds to serve her commands forever, assuring him with a chilling smile that she only does this to those who deserve it, leaving Derek to quietly process this terrifying revelation with a serious look. Stella finally sits up and rubs her head, wondering how long she was out, while Derek chuckles and says it was long enough for a very productive chat, prompting Stella to quickly get to work on drafting their official business contract, sliding the paper over and pointing to the line where he needs to sign, which Derek does without hesitation, officially sealing their highly lucrative new partnership, as Stella warmly shakes his hand and welcomes him to the Crown family, presenting him with a beautiful gold membership card and instructing him to bind it, which he does by injecting a bit of his mana into the card, before she hands over the requested storage ring packed with premium culinary tools, leaving Derek highly satisfied as he inspects the impressive array of kitchen gear. Stella then presents him with the glowing communication crystal as a personal gift, explaining that Alana rarely finds anyone she enjoys chatting with this much, which Derek gladly accepts while Alana smiles from her sunny garden pavilion, noting that the crystal currently holds her contact sigil but can store others, bidding him farewell before the magical connection finally clicks off for the day, prompting Stella to ask about the request to shadow their chefs tomorrow morning, assuming it was for Tommy, only for Derek to reveal it is actually for Sylvie, leaving the receptionist completely flabbergasted that a bunny is going to be cooking. While back at the inn 2 hours later, a dark aura begins to brew, as Derek casually walks through the door to greet his waiting companions. Suddenly, a massive blast of purple energy completely shatters the wooden door, sending Derek flying back as he looks up to see a furious Sylvie, who unleashes another powerful beam while screaming that he went to the restaurant without her, forcing Derek to quickly catch the angry bunny before she can do more damage, while the loud commotion instantly draws the attention of the angry innkeeper, who stomps down the hallway screaming about delinquents destroying his property, only for Derek to casually toss him a heavy pouch of gold coins, which instantly cures the man's anger as he happily skips away with a smile, leaving Tommy to peek out of his room and ask what happened to Sylvie, only to react with equal dramatic beat rail upon hearing Derek went to the Crown. Derek explains he only went to secure their membership and get more food, which instantly stops both of them in their tracks with wide, sparkling eyes, before he adds that he actually brought back a special gift for Sylvie, teasing her that he might give it to someone else since she tried to blast him, prompting the bunny to quickly apologize as Derek tells her to hold out her paw, gently sliding a tiny gold ring onto her fluffy limb for a perfect fit, which makes Sylvie gasp in pure delight as she sees the cooking tools inside, though Derek warns her that this is only the first part of her gift, as she immediately summons a storm of sharp kitchen knives to float around her, leaving both Derek and Tommy sweating in absolute regret over what they just unleashed. This next morning, the sun rises over the grand towers of the city, while inside the bustling kitchen of the Crown, the head chef lines up his staff, pacing back and forth while sternly lecturing them about running like a perfect machine, warning that any mistake will grind their entire operation to a complete halt, prompting the nervous cooks to shout their agreement in unison to their strict boss, who nods in approval, before announcing that things will be a bit different today, turning around with a serious expression to introduce their very special guest, revealing Sylvie sitting proudly on a chair in a chef's hat and waving happily, as the bewildered chefs quickly get to work chopping up ingredients for the day, pouring wine over hot pans to start a chaotic but delicious culinary training session. Inside the bustling kitchen of the Crown, chefs are shouting orders and tossing ingredients everywhere, leaving Sylvie completely mesmerized by the chaotic beauty of high-end culinary arts, as she watches the staff work in perfect harmony and decides she must learn their secrets, starting her very first lesson by staring down a single onion with absolute determination, which immediately transports her into a dramatic, imaginary battlefield against the vegetable. She summons her telekinetic powers to levitate her knife, declaring the onion a foul creature, demanding to know why it dares to trespass into her sacred culinary domain, as the imaginary onion takes on a terrifying form with its life now completely forfeit, prompting Sylvie to charge forward with a battle cry to strike her opponent down, unleashing a massive purple slash that cleanly splits the imaginary beast in half. She blows a victorious breath, fully convinced she has conquered her very first culinary foe, only to snap back to reality and blink in utter confusion at the cutting board, realizing her knife is actually just stuck awkwardly in the top of the uncut onion, forcing her to sweat and strain as she desperately tugs at the blade with her mind, while two nearby chefs watch in absolute bewilderment as a bunny tries to cook with telekinesis, though Sylvie quickly recovers her pride, praising the onion for being a surprisingly worthy opponent. She leaps high into the air for another round of her intense mental battle, declaring that while the vegetable is strong, she is ultimately the superior warrior, diving back down with her knife to deliver the final decisive blow to her enemy, slamming her power down so hard that the imaginary ground completely shatters beneath her. Unfortunately, the real-world force of her telekinesis launches the onion high into the air, sending Sylvie into a sudden panic as she watches her ingredient fly away, realizing that if the onion touches the dirty floor, her entire dish will be ruined, since the chefs explicitly warned her that Derek's beloved 5-second rule is a total lie. Determined to save her masterpiece, she launches herself across the kitchen like a purple rocket, bouncing off the back of a startled chef to gain some extra height, before using another poor cook as a stepping stone to reach the falling vegetable, as the onion continues its rapid descent toward the hard, unforgiving kitchen floor. She dives forward and snatches it out of the air, sliding gracefully across the tiles, landing in a proud pose while holding the saved onion high above her head. This chefs can only stare in deadpan silence, wondering why she did all that for one onion, while the rest of the kitchen is left in absolute shambles from her dramatic rescue. Meanwhile, Derek casually strolls back into his lodging after a very long day, heading up the stairs while wondering how Sylvie is holding up on her first day of training, only to be interrupted by a fancy messenger who has been desperately trying to reach him, handing over a formal invitation from none other than City Lord Malcolm Torreth, prompting Derek to put on a fake smile and act incredibly honored by the gesture. As the messenger explains, it is an exclusive private dinner scheduled for this coming weekend. But the moment the man finishes speaking, Derek casually tosses the letter straight into the trash, walking right past the stunned messenger to enjoy the beautiful morning air outside. Suddenly, his new communication crystal begins to glow and ring in his hand, prompting him to answer Alana and ask what she wants so early in the day, only for her to reveal that her spies spotted Thomas leaving the city, traveling alongside a young girl and Malcolm's arrogant son, Clay, on a quest. Derek groans in frustration, realizing he cannot avoid dealing with the City Lord's family anymore, as Alana explains they are heading east to hunt horned boars in Malcolm's private territory, thanking her for the heads-up before deciding he needs to go and tail them. Though Alana quickly warns him to make sure he does not kill Malcolm's son, admitting she really does not want to deal with a crying noble over a dead child, reminding him with a sharp look that his actions directly reflect on their new alliance. Derek promises to keep everyone alive and make sure nothing too disastrous happens, sighing as he wonders what kind of mess Thomas has gotten himself into this time. Deep in the mountain forests, Thomas and his companions trek along a dirt path, while Clay boasts about a secret hunting spot filled with powerful horned boars, prompting Thomas to ask how he can be so sure they will have the area to themselves, only for Alicia to reveal that Clay is actually a high-ranking noble in this region, which finally explains the heavily armed guards trailing closely behind them. Clay smugly explains the guards are only there to round up beasts or assist if needed, leaving Thomas to quietly wonder why a noble would risk his reputation by hanging out with commoners. Though Clay quickly puts his arm around Alicia, claiming she is like a sister to him, before turning to Thomas with a cold warning not to get hurt if he cannot fight, prompting Thomas to channel his mana and confidently state he can hold his own, which Clay dismisses with a simple nod as they reach the hunting grounds. Clay draws his sword and shield, announcing that their targets have finally arrived, as a massive shadow looms over the edge of the rocky cliffside ahead of them. A giant horned boar charges out of the brush with glowing red eyes, roaring furiously as it rushes straight toward the waiting party with terrifying speed, prompting Alicia to cast her support buffs while Clay charges forward to meet the beast, slamming his heavy shield into the monster's snout and yelling for Thomas to attack. As Thomas leaps high into the air with his spear poised to strike, he drives his spear deep into the boar's shoulder, drawing first blood in the fight, landing a powerful follow-up strike that sends a shockwave through the dirt, while Clay taunts the beast to keep its aggressive focus entirely on him, blocking another heavy charge with his shield to create a perfect opening. Thomas begins to channel a massive surge of blue mana through his weapon, unleashing a devastating beam of energy that pierces straight through the giant boar, leaving both Clay and Alicia staring in absolute shock as the beast crashes down, while Thomas casually flicks the blood off his spear like it was nothing. Clay admits Thomas is much stronger than he expected, demanding to know what skill he used, to which Thomas calmly replies it is just a basic ability from his class, prompting Clay to press for details on his class rarity until Alicia tells him to stop, though Clay quickly waves it off, hiding his growing jealousy behind a fake smile. But the moment he turns away, his expression twists into pure, bitter resentment over the display. Thomas sits down on the grass to meditate and quickly recover his mana, declining Alicia's offer of healing since his health is already completely full, just as a loud rumble echoes through the trees as another boar approaches, charging down the path after being flushed out by one of the guards, prompting Clay and Alicia to exchange a silent, highly suspicious nod with each other. Clay asks Thomas if he is ready to fight while drawing his sword, but Alicia suddenly apologizes, claiming she only has enough mana to buff Clay this time, while Clay urges Thomas to stop complaining and help him block the incoming charge. This massive boar barrels down on them at full speed, targeting Clay's shield, as a malicious smirk suddenly spreads across the noble's face in anticipation of his plan. At the very last second, Clay leaps out of the way, leaving Thomas completely exposed, allowing the giant beast to slam directly into Thomas with devastating bone-shattering force, sending him flying backward as blood splatters across the grassy field from the impact. Thomas struggles to his feet, clutching his bleeding chest and demanding to know what happened, while the guards stand by with their crossbows raised, watching the scene coldly, before firing a volley of bolts to finish off the distracted boar, as Clay smiles wickedly, admitting it would have been much easier if Thomas had just died. Clutching his bleeding chest, Thomas looks up in absolute betrayal and asks why they did this, but Clay just sneers, claiming a commoner has no right to own a valuable storage ring, leaving the wounded boy to realize they set him up just to steal his possessions. Though instead of despairing, Thomas suddenly starts to chuckle through the pain. He laughs maniacally, realizing his mentor was completely right about not trusting people so easily, which leaves Clay and Alicia utterly baffled as they try to figure out who he means, until Clay suddenly remembers the rumor of a powerful man traveling with a pet bunny. Terrified by the realization, Bradley trembles and warns his young master that they need to stop. This arrogant noble completely dismisses the warning, declaring they must eliminate the boy to leave no witnesses. Thomas struggles to his feet, raising his spear to defend himself one last time. Raising his sword, Clay commands his guards to fire and finish the boy off, prompting the archers to step forward and aim their deadly crossbows at the target. But as a volley of bolts flies through the air toward the defenseless youth, a sudden burst of purple lightning shatters every single projectile into harmless splinters, leaving the entire group gaping in absolute horror at the sudden display of power. Clapping his hands casually, Derek appears out of nowhere to stand beside his battered disciple, patting Thomas on the head while praising him for fighting well and using meditation, telling the kid to rest easy because his mentor will handle the rest of this mess. While Thomas weakly apologizes for not listening to his warnings about the deceitful girl. Unleashing a soothing green light, Derek heals the boy's wounds while joking about teenage hormones. Annoyed at being completely ignored, Clay loudly clears his throat to get their attention, but Derek just keeps chatting with Thomas, asking if he has been practicing his combat, prompting the boy to admit he might need to borrow more gold for training rooms, which sends Clay into a screaming fit as he demands to know who they are, though Derek simply ignores the tantrum, continuing to praise Thomas for his smart battle tactics, ruffling his hair and smiling as if they are just having a casual stroll, while Clay's face turns a deep, furious red from the sheer disrespect. Walking along the path, Derek asks if the fight gave him a lot of experience, and Thomas proudly nods, revealing he managed to gain an entire level from the battle, prompting Clay to completely lose his mind and scream for his guards to attack. Grinning with dark amusement, Derek notes the noble brat lasted longer than he originally expected, as Clay charges forward with his sword drawn, screaming for his men to kill them. But while the archers raise their weapons to follow the reckless command, Bradley suddenly rushes to the front, desperately shouting for his men to hold their fire, arguing with his furious young master that his true duty is to keep him alive, prompting Derek to step forward and calmly address the guard captain by his name, before unleashing a terrifying, suffocating purple aura that completely dominates the entire field. Shaking in his boots, Bradley immediately begs for mercy, realizing they have offended a monster, as Derek slowly approaches, asking if they think murdering commoners is perfectly fine without him there, leaving the guard captain stammering in absolute terror as the pressure continues to rise. Roaring that their behavior is inexcusable, Derek lets his massive power flare violently, causing the guards, Alicia, and even the arrogant noble to tremble and fall to their knees, as he casually mentions his pet bunny could easily wipe out their entire group, leaving them to wonder what kind of nightmare he could personally unleash upon them. Bradley desperately pleads for their lives, hoping to appease the terrifying warrior before them, prompting Derek to calm his aura, mentioning he was just chatting with a friend earlier, explaining that Alana asked him not to kill anyone, so he will let them go, which has Bradley bowing in deep gratitude, though Derek tells him to thank her instead, before teasingly musing that the guards probably aren't considered important enough to spare anyway, sending a fresh wave of panic through the men as they freeze in terror. Laughing heartily, Derek reveals he is just joking because he is in a great mood, prompting the panicked guards to scramble and urge each other to run away immediately, fleeing down the mountain path as fast as their legs can carry them. Bradley bows deeply one last time, expressing his sincere gratitude for Derek's immense generosity, but Derek simply tells him to inform Malcolm that he will be visiting soon, leaving Clay trembling on the ground in absolute humiliation and lingering dread, as the guard captain runs off to catch up with his retreating squad. This powerful hunter casually asks Thomas if he is hungry for some roasted pork. While back at the city, Bradley frantically knocks on the massive doors of the manor, which are opened by Captain Herritt, who notes that the guard looks completely terrified. Shaking uncontrollably, Bradley explains that a major incident occurred during the young master's hunt, assuring him that everyone survived, though Herritt sternly demands that he spit it out, prompting the guard to reveal that the situation directly involves the infamous Derek Hunt. They quickly march into the grand golden audience chamber to report the dire news, where City Lord Malcolm Torrith sits on his throne and addresses the nervous guard, who bows deeply, feeling incredibly honored that the Lord even remembers his name, though Malcolm impatiently demands to know why he has returned to the manor, prompting Bradley to explain that the issue concerns his son and Derek Hunt, nervously detailing how Clay tried to rob and murder a seemingly helpless commoner boy, to which Malcolm coldly responds, showing he does not care about a commoner's life. Realizing the Lord's apathy, Bradley sweat drops and reveals the boy is actually Derek's disciple, causing Malcolm's eyes to widen in sudden, absolute shock as the gravity hits him, while Bradley adds that Derek claimed he has his attention and will visit soon, prompting the panicked Lord to immediately turn to his captain with a grim expression, ordering him to recall every single guard back to the manor for defense, declaring that they must prepare themselves for whatever storm is about to arrive. Sometime later, Derek arrives at the grand gates of the heavily guarded estate, deciding he will play the role of his eccentric persona today for maximum fun, as a guard welcomes him inside, stating the city lord has been expecting him, allowing him to stroll through the gates while wondering why they took so long. Image 2681. Walking through the lavish courtyard, Derek observes the elite forces stationed along the path. This lead pushes forward as the conflict keeps escalating, noting that these highly trained guards look like they could handle an entire company, or perhaps even two companies of specialized soldiers, judging by their serious gear, before suddenly shouting that they could easily defeat a whole battalion of squirrels, leaving a guard's brow twitching as Derek warns him not to underestimate the rodents. He finally reaches the massive double doors leading into the grand audience chamber, where Malcolm sits on his throne, growing increasingly anxious about the guests' arrival until the heavy doors creak open loudly, casting a long shadow across the carpet. As Derek casually walks in, complaining about the squeaky hinges and suggesting some lubricant, completely ignoring the formal welcome as he strolls right past the armed guards. Whistling in amazement, Derek looks around the lavish room and comments on its grandeur, gasping dramatically as he asks if Malcolm is actually a king hiding in disguise, before loudly ordering everyone to bow to his highness and dropping into a bow, which sends Malcolm leaping to his feet in a panic, screaming that it is treason, though Derek just acts innocent, pointing out only a king would build such a room, forcing the flustered lord to shout his actual title while Derek demands an apology, leaving Malcolm gaping in absolute disbelief at the sheer audacity of his guest. This exhausted lord slumps back into his throne, completely drained by the ridiculous antics, while Captain Herritt watches from the side, quietly finding the entire situation highly entertaining, and Derek steps forward with a smirk, introducing himself and offering a choice of titles. Derek introduces himself to Captain Herritt while Malcolm sits shocked on his throne. Herritt glances back, sizing up this incredibly casual powerhouse standing right in front of him, realizing Derek already knows exactly who he is and what his true rank might be, as Derek points out that babysitting a spoiled noble brat is far beneath his actual skills, prompting the captain to stoically reply that he simply does what his lord requires. Though Derek immediately starts guessing if it's blackmail, an oath, or a classic life-saving debt, before casually offering to pay him 1,000 gold a month to switch sides instead, which sends Malcolm into a complete panic as he realizes his elite captain is being recruited, while Derek just blinks and asks who the Screaming Lord is even supposed to be, leaving Herritt to politely decline the offer because he isn't motivated by simple coin. Shrugging it off, Derek decides to finally get back to the actual matter at hand, turning his attention to the trembling Lord to discuss his bratty son's recent crimes, which instantly snaps Malcolm's remaining patience as his face contorts in pure rage, screaming that a noble's son can do whatever he wants to lowly, worthless villagers, leaving Derek completely unimpressed by the classic arrogant noble speech he just delivered, as Malcolm rants about how he invited Derek as a guest despite the threats, demanding that the hunter start showing him some respect or face the consequences, only for a sudden, violent blast of purple energy to slam him back into his throne, as Derek's eyes glow with a terrifying light that silences the entire room, causing the elite guards to instantly collapse to the floor under the crushing pressure. Stepping forward, Derek lets his suffocating aura completely dominate the grand audience chamber, calmly explaining that those lowly villagers happen to be his close personal friends, whose lives are worth infinitely more than any corrupt noble or his spoiled spawn, roaring that their value is absolute simply because he declared it to be so, while Malcolm and his guards lie completely paralyzed and helpless on the floor, as Derek warns them that normally he would have left no survivors in this room, looming over the terrified Lord to promise absolute destruction if they ever cross him again, forcing Malcolm to frantically nod and stammer out his complete submission to the threat, which earns him a couple of patronizing slaps on the cheek from a smiling Derek, who casually turns to leave while offering Herritt one last chance to call him. Whistling a cheerful tune, Derek strolls past the groveling guards without a single care, giving a playful wink and apologizing for not staying to enjoy a nice dinner, leaving the city lord utterly shattered and trembling in fear as the doors close. And 3 days later, Derek is enjoying a beautiful, peaceful day in the city, taking a slow sip of his drink while reflecting on how smoothly things are going, absolutely thrilled that Stella's scientists actually managed to brew a decent cup of coffee, while drowning in a massive pile of gold coins that keeps rolling in, though his pet bunny Sylvie is currently busy working in the Crown's royal kitchens, using her lightning-fast magic to chop ingredients and terrify the professional chefs, prompting Derek to lick his lips and hope she makes some great campfire food. Meanwhile, Thomas spent a day pouting in bed after dealing with the painful betrayal, but he quickly got back on his feet to prove his mentor right, channeling his elemental energy instead of letting the painful despair slow him down, using that anger as fuel to focus entirely on what truly matters now, training relentlessly against wooden dummies to push his combat skills to the absolute limit. While Derek receives a thoughtful letter from Mallory updating him on the village, reading that Reyna's recovery has been progressing incredibly well since the brutal attack, as she stands on a balcony looking healthy and ready to face the world, while Leon has truly stepped up to lead the villagers as they build homes, and Thomas's grandparents are already happily preparing for the boy's eventual return home. Even Bart is back to serving his notoriously terrible beer with a proud wink, while Mallory writes about her own intense training to become a top-tier hunter, successfully defending a neighboring village by taking down a massive beast with her spear. And Brandy has been unleashing some seriously explosive magical power during her practice, lighting up the entire area with a brilliant display of raw arcane energy, which makes Derek smile as he realizes things are going perfectly back home, though he wonders how many of them will join him on his next journey, until 2 days later, he walks into the grand headquarters of the guild, casually greeting the guards as he asks if Stella is currently in her office, only for the red-haired beauty to greet him warmly from the grand staircase. He thanks her for the delicious coffee she had delivered straight to his room, prompting Stella to invite him out for a casual walk to discuss business, as they stroll through the streets while discussing his planned departure tomorrow morning. Though she asks how Sylvie took the news of leaving her favorite kitchen, which makes Derek chuckle as he recalls the bunny crying over the food, joking that he promised her a permanent cooking spot once they finally settle down, before Stella's expression turns serious as she prepares to ask him something important, explaining that she wants to leave the city and travel alongside him instead, only for a sudden panicked scream to interrupt their quiet moment together in the street. As Bronson comes charging down the stairs in a state of absolute frenzy, Derek yells back, annoyed that his peaceful conversation was just rudely cut short, but Bronson frantically gasps out that Malcolm has launched a surprise attack on the village, sending a wave of absolute shock and cold fury washing over the hunter, as the villagers desperately try to fight off a brutal raid by armored soldiers, struggling to defend their home against a coordinated assault that catches them off guard, while a heavily guarded carriage speeds away from the burning settlement with captives, carrying out the Lord's orders to capture a specific girl and deliver her, leaving the captured villagers trapped inside the wooden cage as it rolls away. While Bronson weakly apologizes for not arriving sooner to prevent the terrible tragedy, as Derek's eyes flare with a terrifying, murderous purple light that promises absolute doom. Whispering her name, he calls out to his loyal pet with chilling calmness, interrupting Sylvie right as she is happily decorating a delicious dessert in the kitchen, telling her they have a group of foolish people to eliminate right away, as a massive explosion of purple lightning completely shatters the front of the building, sending Derek charging forward with his battle-ready bunny riding directly on his shoulder, both of them radiating a terrifying aura of pure, unadulterated, and deadly magical wrath, as they blast through the city streets like a comet of absolute destruction, leaving Stella and Bronson staring in awe at the storm about to unleash.